Meeting will now come to order. Let's all stand together for the pledge. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance. Thank you. You may be seated. I love hearing the pledge, and I love hearing a full room of voices in chorus giving the Pledge of Allegiance. So thank you for doing that. Mrs. Allman, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Conley,
Here.
Mr. Emig,
Here.
Mr. Hogan,
Here.
Mr. Kindig,
Here.
Mr. McKinney,
Present.
Mrs. Meese. Here. Mrs. Miller. Here. Mrs. Whitmer. Here. Mr. Wolverton.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you, Mrs. Allman. I want to welcome the members of the public to this meeting of the Dover Area School District Board of Directors. During tonight's presentation, you'll hear a presentation of the 2024-25 preliminary budget. The content of this presentation has been available online since the end of last week through our district internet portal at doversd.org. As evidenced by some of the recent conversation on social media and through email, many of you have reviewed it and have noticed a number of ideas that are being proposed as possible solutions to our budget dilemma. I want to stress that no proposals have yet been submitted by this board of directors in the form of either reductions or increases. I would like to also remind the public that individual board members do not have any more authority than any member of the public in the matters of open discourse. Therefore, if a member makes a statement, it does not mean that the idea or suggestion will be taken up as a matter of business by the board, unless it is made in the form of a motion and is seconded by another member. Even so, it can only be successfully enacted by a majority of the board. This means that a member may express opinions in the course of open discussion in much the same way as members of the public are empowered to do so during our public comment period. Now, as for our business tonight, this is a planning meeting, which means members will be gathering information and asking questions and expressing opinions. One of the primary concerns before the board is our consideration of the 2024-2025 budget that is being proposed by the administration for a $3.4 million increase above the 2023-2024 levels. To be clear, the board is not proposing to cut even $1 from last year's budget. And I'm fairly confident in stating that we're not likely to hear anyone propose that. The truth is, the board has not yet made it known what we intend to do with the proposed budget. In fact, I am sure that this has fostered some justifiable level of frustration with our district administration. In one of tonight's presentations, you will see 4 options listed in order of values which we will address the proposed deficit provided to the school board. And number 1 is the expenditure savings. Number 2 is revenue enhancement. Number 3 is fund balance usage or drawdown. And number 4 is a tax increase through either millage or EIT taxes. As you can see, another tax increase is our last and least desirable option. We'll take those options in that order. So we're first looking for ways to save money. And so we're looking at a lot of things, and we don't yet know what we're going to do, as I stated. That being said, we begin this year with sizable disadvantages handed to us by our predecessors, namely significant loss of revenue resulting from the succession of Washington Township. Number 2, significant debt incurred by the building of a new high school. Number 3, significantly increased financial obligations resulting from the negotiation of labor contracts. Number 4, fragile infrastructure resulting from years of neglect. And number 5, potential multi-million-dollar obligations resulting from legal judgments against the district. As one member of this board, I fully intend to explore every available option before settling on a decision to increase the tax burden on our local citizens and our businesses. I've said this before and I say it again, taxes are a community killer. They tend to stagnate local communities by driving away business, and they steer away newcomers to our community. As all of you are aware of what we've been talking about in these last months, you are wise to continue to pay attention, and we welcome your comments tonight and your engagement and involvement with the board, whether it's through email or whether it's through attendance at the board meetings. So during our public comment period tonight, or two public comment periods tonight, we will look forward to hearing your input in a civil way. So thank you all for joining us tonight. And for our first item on the agenda, I'll recognize Mrs. Weaver, our CFOO, to come up and make a presentation on the 2024-2025 budget.
Before we start the budget presentation, I'd like to point out an update to the Business Affairs webpage. There's now a link to the property tax rent rebate program through the PA Department of Revenue. You can apply online, and there's a how-to instructions on completing the application as well as finding in-person support. This was mentioned during public comment by a resident. I thank Mrs. Danner and Mr. Perkins for the work. As presented at the February board meeting, the district was facing a $3.4 million deficit. Even with updates that took place in February, we are still facing a $3.4 million deficit. To start off, I'd like to point out a few items that transpired since February. The district had additional retirement and resignation savings and some additional column movement. The cyber charter school line item expenditure was increased, which was mentioned as a possibility in February. The Exceptional Children's Department will be adding 2 classes, a primary behavioral intervention classroom and an intensive learning support. These classrooms will bring back students being educated outside the district and through the LIU. The net savings before the grant is almost $8,000. However, Mr. Perkins submitted and was awarded through the PCCD a behavioral intervention grant that will assist in funding 1 classroom for the next 2 years. There was an increase in the vocational education subsidy according to the governor's budget. Mr. Benton will be using these funds to offset current expenditures. There is also an increase in the transportation subsidy based on preliminary estimates for 23-24. Outlined are major increases to the 24-25 budget. The majority of them are contractually or legally obligated expenditures. According to the PSBA 2024 State of Education Report, the growth in unfunded mandated expenditures, particularly pension, cyber tuition, and special education costs, have drastically outpaced the growth in all areas of school spending. In order to accommodate this, districts have kept the growth in other areas of spending well below the rate of inflation. There were 4 options outlined to the board during the February meeting. Administration stated at the end of the February 20th budget deliberation that we would come with a recommendation. We're going to start with the expenditure savings. As previously seen in other presentations, we are recommending elimination of the SOAR classroom at the middle school, which is a current vacant position. We are recommending reducing 1 SWAT teacher, which is a current vacant position. We are recommending eliminate 1 district floater nurse, which is a current vacant position. We are recommending elimination of gridiron cleaning services. And lastly, we are recommending use of the cap reserve fund for debt payments. Our next administration recommendation is the drawdown of access funding. We're recommending scenario 2, which we feel is fair and equitable based on the current situation for the budget. We are recommending using $1.8 million of fund balance, leaving the district with a still very healthy fund balance that is 15% of estimated 24-25 expenditures. We are also recommending a 2% increase in the millage rate, which will fund an additional $594,000. Highlighted is the increase in taxes with a 2% millage increase based on the various assessments. To summarize, we utilized all 4 options to close the gap between revenue and expenditures. The next handful of slides, I'm going to discuss 5-year projections as well as updated actuals as of January. I know there's a lot of data contained in this one schedule. The next few slides will outline the 23-24 budget to actual projections as of January, as well as budget projections from 24-25 through 28-29. To start out, I will discuss the 23-24 budget to actual projections as of January, leading with revenues. As mentioned in February, the tax collection rate for the last 2 years has been 96.6 as opposed to 96.5, which impacted the projections. Year to date, there has been an increase in interim taxes, EIT, and interest earnings as outlined at the November board meeting when the first budget to actual projections were discussed. IDA funding came in higher than budgeted with an offsetting decrease in title funding. There is an increase in tuition revenue, which is due to several special education students from other districts being educated through Dover. There's an increase in the anticipated transportation subsidy, which was adjusted according to the preliminary PD subsidy calculation. The increase is due to higher maximum allowable costs. There was also an increase in access funding and a decrease in delinquent real estate taxes. The anticipated actuals are lower than they have been in the last 10 years. There's a decrease in the special education subsidy due to a reduction in the weighted student count and the number of students in certain cost categories. Lastly, a decrease in ESSER funding as discussed at the November board meeting, as well as a reduction in the sale of fixed assets due to timing. The district is seeing an increase in the cost of Gridiron due to being unable to fill the custodial vacancies. There's an expected increase in debt service due to the set-aside amount funded through the cap reserve. There was a 20% increase in the cost of transportation this year with the new contract. Going forward, the increases are according to CPI. There is also an increase in tuition and placements. Currently, there are 196 students being educated through cyber charter schools from Dover. The increase in dues and fees correlates to the increase in EIT revenue. Each district pays a small fee to York Area Tax Bureau for processing. There's a decrease in supplies, estimated tuition reimbursement to employees, medical insurance expenses, and LIU costs. There's also a decrease in the cost of water, which was offset by the increase in natural gas and electricity. As I mentioned several times in the last year to year and a half, there has been significant increases in the cost of gas and electricity. Currently, there is an 18% increase in electricity and a 19% increase in natural gas. All of these utility changes have been reflected in the 24-25 budget. The importance of having long-term projections while deliberating the current budget was discussed during the last board meeting. The projections were prepared based on historical trends and current factors. The information is then extrapolated into estimates for future years, noting changing variables which have been briefly outlined in this presentation. The 24-25 fiscal year was used as a springboard or year one. Starting with revenues, there's a 1.5% increase in real estate assessment values for all 5 years based on past trends. Also included during 26-27 is the addition of the warehouse facility and the solar farm. From my discussions with Mr. McLucas, Planning Director for Dover Township, the York Industrial Development, or warehouses, are going to be approximately 200 acres with an estimated assessment value of $500,000 an acre. Also recently, Cottontail Solar in West Manchester Township was assessed. It was valued at approximately $11,000 to $15,000 an acre. In the projections, it is assumed the solar farms in Dover will yield similar results. There are approximately 450 acres, of which about 250 acres will have solar panels on them. It is estimated this project is about 2 years out. There's also an increase in interim taxes and EIT. There was a tiered reduction in interest income, which is based on the current economic climate. There were also increases in the basic education subsidy, special education subsidy, and transportation subsidy. Social Security and PSERS reimbursement correlate to the applicable salary and benefits. The reimbursement for debt or rental subsidy is tied to the debt schedule. Access funding was allocated according to scenario 2 and then leveled out. Both the GASB entry and Salem fixed assets are according to the technology replacement schedule. Next, we have expenditures. Salaries are based on current negotiated contracts and agreements with applicable Social Security and PSERS expenditures. Medical premiums increases are according to Conrad Siegel's projections. Increase in transportation costs are according to CPI, estimated CPI, along with a small increase in property insurance, which was vetted through the district's insurance agent. Additional increases include cyber charter tuition, alternative education placement, the York County School of Technology tuition, and utilities. As mentioned with revenues, the GASB entry and the lease payments are according to the technology replacement cycle. And lastly, we have the bond payments according to the debt schedule. To recap, there's a lot of information presented in the last few slides. However, we do need to keep in mind long-term forecasts are usually less accurate and reliable than short-term forecasts, as they are based on historical and projected data and have more uncertainty and variability. At the previous board meeting, there was a request to review replacement of staff retiring or resigning. This is a task that is done by administration behind the scenes. However, for transparency purposes, we will be discussing the implications of each position tonight.
The next 18 slides list the retiring employees, and I'll say right up front, we are not recommending eliminating any of these positions, and the reasons for each are on each slide. I will not read every slide to the board. They are projected, and everyone can read those. I might highlight a couple of points on some of them, but I won't read all of them to you. So I'll give a couple of minutes to read, and then I can answer questions about any of them if anyone has one. Principal is a big position, and we do not recommend that one principal take 2 buildings. I think I'll just leave it at that for now.
Dr. Carter, would you like me to flip through the slides?
That would be so very helpful.
yeah.
Thank you. Director of Exceptional Children, another ginormous position that we would not recommend not filling. Next couple are 1st, 4th, and 5th grade teachers at different elementary schools, I believe. And I have given the current year before that grade. So for North Salem 1st grade on this particular slide, we are looking at the kindergartners going into 1st grade next year, how many classrooms those kindergartners are divided into this year, and how many we would expect to be divided into next year. So if we are taking 52 kindergartners into 3 classrooms for next year, 4 classrooms of 17 to 18, reducing a 1st grade teacher would then put 52 students in 2 classrooms, and we would have 26 1st graders per class. I would not recommend that. I do refer to our AR and policy 126 for that, as well as the next 2 positions. Same thing with the 4th grade teacher at Weigelstown. We currently have 58 students in 2 classrooms, which gives us 29 4th graders per class. We will have the same number of classrooms next year if we don't reduce a classroom. We do not want 58 students in 1 classroom. We currently have 2 5th grade classrooms at Weigelstown. And then we'll move to the 5th grade teacher at Dover. We're in a similar position. We have 2 5th grade teachers currently, and we have 31 students in a classroom, which is still a pretty large classroom. So we are not recommending not replacing any of those. We have a retirement of a librarian next at North Salem and Libe. We have librarians, 2 librarians who both work at 2 buildings. If we were to eliminate this librarian position, we'd have 1 librarian for 4 buildings, and students would receive a library or book exchange once every 4 to 6 weeks rather than once a cycle, which is 6 days currently. We have eliminated 3 encore teaching positions in the last 3 years. Encore consists of art, library, music, phys ed, and STEM. Move to
Here we
the
go.
reading
Yep,
specialist
yep,
position.
yep.
Thank you. Our reading specialist positions are federally funded through Title I. Our reading specialists provide Tier 1 and Tier 3 supports for students who perform at below grade level. Our district comprehensive plan goals include meeting interim targets for English language arts on PSSA and Keystone. Therefore, we need this early intervention to get our students up to grade level and performing where we want them to. There's a personal care assistant position in the life skills class at North Salem. Excuse me. You can see that a PCA is an employee hired to work with a student to provide specific and individualized supports as deemed necessary in the IEP. An IEP is a legally binding document, so we want to provide the supports that are listed as needed for the student in the IEP. Otherwise, we would be violating state and federal law and not serving the child. In the beginning of the presentation, you saw the elimination of 1 SWAT teacher. We currently have 2 vacant positions, so we are recommending we replace one and not the other. And that is a lot about classroom sizes, the physical space, and class sizes with student numbers. The middle school has some very, very small classrooms, and we don't want to put more students than the rooms can handle. We have a 7th grade science position at the middle school that is currently vacant, We have 3 teams on each grade level, 6, 7, and 8 at the middle school. If we were to reduce to 2 classes or 2 teams, our class sizes would be up toward 29 and 30 per class, and it would make meeting the needs of students much more difficult. We have a retiring social studies teacher at the high school as well. If we eliminated this position, again, we would increase class sizes and we would reduce social studies elective options for students. It may also be a challenge for students to get their required social studies credits. And I would like to remind everyone at this point that the district has reduced 8 high school classroom teaching positions in less than 3 years. And we do need a certain number of teachers to support 1,000 students 4 periods a day. We have a music teacher and a band director at the high school. If we eliminated this position, we would need to take the elementary instrumental teacher and move teachers around, and instrument lessons would not be offered at the elementary level. We have 2 tech ed positions currently. Either one's vacant at the moment, very recently vacant, and one will be a retirement. So if we were to not replace the commercial and advertising art teacher, we have students who would not be able to complete their CTE program that they've been in. We would eliminate electives for all 1,000 students in the high school, and we would reduce options for humanities credits, which are required. I won't read the rest of that slide to you at this point. The second position I just mentioned, again, certain number of students not able to complete their choice of CTE program, electives not available for the rest of the students in the building, and this particular position or program happens to offer the highest number of industry certifications and helps with Act 158 graduation requirements. We have a paraprofessional position at the high school. This paraprofessional works with our learning support teachers and students with IEPs. They are highly qualified individuals, and they provide academic support to students in regular education classes or their least restrictive environment.
The accounting clerk helps to keep our internal controls in place that are relied upon by the auditors. That's how they design the audit procedures to express an opinion on the financial statements. We would see a decrease in response time to questions from our customers, both within the district and outside the district. Reduction in the ability to cross-train the business office employees, which could paralyze operations in the case of an unexpected employee emergency or illness. Decrease in timeliness of cash receipts processing, and decrease on the ability to perform special projects. So obviously we're advising against that. We are a very small business office and we do a lot. The access secretary, we would no longer receive the access funds. It's a very detailed, monotonous, there's a lot of variables that go into access funding and reporting, and this is not a job that can be parceled out to various people. It needs to be done by one person who's got the expertise.
And our last position is the computer technician. We need this position for evening activities, outside service. A lot of projects would have to be done in-house, so we would have to use outside service providers. It would definitely increase response time to teacher and student technology needs. And we have already eliminated a computer technician position in the last 3 years. Our IT staff is also very small.
So the following slide is a recap of the $5 million budget savings that has assisted in alleviating the deficit caused by the Washington Township loss. As mentioned previously, administration has recommended a 4-tier approach to closing the gap between revenue and expenditures. These include expenditure savings, increased utilization of access funding, fund balance usage, and a 2% increase in millage. If the board would like to have alternative options to administration's recommendation for the April presentation, which is the last presentation before preliminary budget adoption in May, please provide us with guidance based on the wants of the board as a whole. There were a few scenarios mentioned at the last board meeting by individual members, but there was no board majority. Legislative changes that are still in the works that would have a positive effect on the budget. Basic education fair funding formula would give us an additional almost $1.3 million for the next 7 years. The cyber charter school tuition cap. Now this is legislation that's been in and out of the budget for several years, so I'm not 100% sure about if it's going to get steam or not, but it could save us approximately like $1.1 million or more, depending on the special education tuition calculation. And the public school facility improvement grant program, 25% local match, max grant is $5 million, but it could help with some of the issues that we have facing with regards to our facilities. At this point, the presentation is concluded, and I will entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Weaver. Appreciate that. Board, any questions for Mrs. Weaver or for the superintendent?
The only thing that I remember is we did say that Officer Schaefer stays in the high school.
The SROs are in the budget. Both
Okay.
SROs are in the budget.
All right.
I do have a question in regards to the access funding.
Yes.
Could you just explain, first of all, what it is, how it gets used, and the scenario too that you were proposing, what all is entailed as far as how you came up with that decision?
Access funding is reported. It's for students with IEPs. It's very specialized. It's very detailed. It's not something that I can easily explain in a board meeting. I did provide you with the link to the website, the Access website. There's a lot of webinars. There's a lot of instruction manuals on there if you're interested in learning more about how Access funding works. We receive approximately $350,000 a year from Access funding submissions. There is about $1.2 million in there right now just from not drawing down as much as we were receiving, which is why I'm recommending scenario 2.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and ask a follow-up question on that. So I went to that link and I still don't fully understand it. So it sounds like a federal Medicaid school-based access program. We're in
That's
the right
correct.
area. So they provide reimbursements for costs. So it just offsets cost directly, but it's not really a source of revenue.
It is a source of revenue. It is a source of revenue. The information is submitted through this Exceptional Children Office, and based on the information we submit and all of the calculations that are done, we are awarded a certain percentage of expenditure reimbursement.
Do we usually, what percentage of reimbursement do we generally see?
It depends on what the issue, it depends on what we submit. It depends on what it is. There's a lot, it's not just one. There's several different types of calculations that are done depending on what the expenditure is.
Okay. Is there some type of, besides the text that's here, and I've gone through all the bullets, is there some type of tutorial that's online that just help us understand it a little bit better?
There should be several on the PD website because I know I've watched all of them.
Okay.
That'll kind of guide you through how it works.
I'll go back and look at that again. Thank you.
Next question. A one millage rate increase on a $100,000 home in this township equals how much increase in taxes?
$24.
Okay.
And is it correct that 1% would bring in 296,000?
Approximately, yes.
I have some questions on Mr. Fluke's looking at getting some boilers for elementary schools. And we're saying it's going to be roughly $1 million or somewhere in that ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
Is that included in your budget figures?
No, that's all ESSER funding. That's the free money that he talked about.
Okay. And then Dr. Houck was talking about collaborative class, several $100,000 if we go with that. Is that included in this budget?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. And the PSBA sent out a magazine the other day, and in it they give, they call it data points. How do your pupil staff ratios compare? They looked at school districts that have anywhere from 2,500 to 4,200 students, which is where we fall, with 3,244 students, according to state figures. And they're saying for administration, you should have one administrator for every 262 students. If you look at us in Dover, that would say we should have 13 administrators. We currently have 21. Then they looked at urban and suburban districts to give another breakdown, another scenario. In that, they came back with you should have roughly one administrator for every 203 students. If we use that figure, that says we should have just over 16 administrators. So it says, to me at least, that we might be a little top heavy.
According to what the research we did, that's not correct. We do have some data from York County to support the fact that we are one of the lower as far as administrators are concerned.
Okay, we'd gladly look at whatever you have. This came out of PSBA.
I read that article. I think you need to look at what the definition of administrator is. I think they're only talking about building principals and administrators with supervisory roles. I don't think that includes directors, like the director of food services, director of technology. Those types of people do make up the 21 people in our staff, but I don't think that that's what they're talking about. So you would need to look at only supervisors.
Okay, so we all know. Management staff, administrative management personnel with supervisory responsibilities includes superintendents, assistant superintendents, business managers, principals, directors, and department heads.
But we don't know who they're counting. I doubt that they're counting the director of food services. I don't think they're counting the director of technology. So we need to compare apples to apples.
I'll agree with you. We don't know exactly, but if I read it, it says they are including those staff, those positions.
Is it possible that other districts call their director of nutrition, for example, another title that would cause it not to fall under these type of numbers?
It's highly possible.
From the district you came from, what do they call that position?
Director of Food Service.
So it's director. Well, I'm trying to figure out why there might be, some disparity in terminology and numbers, because it's very difficult to understand. On one hand, this is what PSBA is stating, and it sounds like they are included, as Director Kindig says, but then under another unknown criteria, they would not be included. So I'm just trying to find out maybe reasons for why they would not be included in another scenario.
I can't give you that because I'm not sure what they included in there. I'd need to have more information. I know what's included in what the data we gathered. I don't know what's included in that.
Suppose we can contact PSBA and ask them. Yeah.
That would be best, yeah.
Yeah.
President Connolly, I can do that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
I have an additional question. So we have like 18 million in this fund balance, roughly?
I don't know. I believe it's 15 at this point right now without the 23-24.
Do you know how much interest we're earning on that money?
Yeah, if you look at the treasurer's report, you can tell that we're earning between 5 and 5.5%.
So we're looking at, let me see. So that's probably about, well, let me just do it real quick. 15 mil.
About $750,000. 5% on 15 million is about 750,000.
Okay, right. So, but we're talking, what I want to do is 1.8 million. So I guess my point is, instead of just doing the math, we're going to lose that money, which is probably a teacher's salary. So by I'm not disagreeing, I'm just making a comment that by reducing our fund balance by 1.8 million, we're going to also eliminate a teacher's position that we could, if we kept that money, provide to the district, $70,000-$80,000. So I'm just making a point. So
You're just saying it's
I'm not against it. I'm just saying the more we take money away from our bucket, the less we're going to earn interest year over year.
You're correct. It's going to reduce revenue.
Yeah.
Is that revenue included in your 5-year budget projections?
Yes, it is.
What thousand is that under? 6, 7, 8, is it under 9,000?
What?
Like what line? So under the revenue?
It's in local. It's in the 6,000 local revenues.
So the interest bearing accounts, that money is in 6,000?
Yes, that's because
Okay.
it's considered local revenue, and it falls under the 6,000 categories according to the chart of accounts.
Since I have the mic, I'll keep going. The slide number 28 that has the 5-year budget projections. What accounts for the significant decrease in the federal funding?
Loss of ESSERs.
Okay. And then in the other revenue line item, your proposed, the 2.175, where's that coming from?
Technology replacement schedule and the GASB 85 lease entry. You'll see
2.2 million?
Yeah, because you have to record the entire when you purchase the lease, you have to record the entire value of the assets. So there's an offsetting expenditure in the equipment, which is under the 700s.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's a wash. It's a net zero.
Yep. Okay.
Miranda, in your proposed that you've, in talking to John Lucas over at the township, have you proposed any increase coming from proposed home building within the township?
It is just the 1.5%. That's what's funding, because we don't have, obviously, as we all know, much industrial commercial. So the 1.5 that we're seeing year over year is residential.
Okay.
So that equipment, I see the cycle is every 4 years.
Yes.
Am I right? And then what expense line item is that balance?
700 equipment.
Okay.
So this slide was one of the most concerning for me, is the disparity between revenue over time and our expenses that we're looking at by 2028, 2029 at $85 million worth of expenses. How do we control that?
I don't think that that's something I could just, I don't know how to answer how we can control that. We have a lot of contractually obligated expenditures.
You know, because there's going to be, I mean, looking forward, if those are uncontrollable expenditures, which, I mean, based on the presentation, most of the expenditures we currently are projecting for the next year are basically uncontrollable expenditures.
Contractually obligated or legally obligated.
So we're looking at over time, in the next 5 years or so, we're looking at dramatic tax increases. Is the only way to deal with it, right?
I wouldn't say that.
You would say modest tax increases.
I would say that there's always a combination that can be best for everyone in the district.
That's a pretty good way to put it.
That's exactly what we did this time around.
Right.
So as far as building up or rebuilding the balance of the fund balance, the capital reserve, how is that possible? If expenses come in lower than projected, that goes into the fund balance as surplus? Is that the only way that we would rebuild the fund balance as we're drawing it down?
Yeah, it would be the only ways if revenues came in higher than expenditures.
Okay.
That's it, yeah.
I have a question in regards to the 2% increase that we received for basic and special ed subsidies.
Mhm.
So that came from the budget last year, right? The governor's budget?
It actually came, what's in there right now is 2% as well, and that came from the governor's budget that he discussed on February 6th.
So the budget was decided.
No, it wasn't, it was discussed. It was his preliminary proposal for basic ed, special ed, vocational ed.
So that number is not concrete. That's just a estimate.
Yeah, well, yes, I mean, we could get the $1.3 million in adequacy funding. I mean, that's also proposed in the budget.
When does that come out?
Whenever the budget, whenever they decide to enact the budget.
Well, what's typically?
There is no typical. It could be, I mean, there's been times where it was 6 months past, it's supposed to be July, July 1st,
I
but
thought July.
it is supposed to be, but it's not always, especially not with what they're proposing this time around. It may not be.
We didn't get a significant increase last year. Do you foresee that happening again?
For what?
From the state?
You mean for basic ed?
Yes.
No, I put in 2%, and that's without the adequacy funding. That's what's currently in the budget.
And last year we received
2%.
2%.
We were the lowest in York County.
The supplemental funding, can you give us a review of where we are with that? Are we above or below, trending upward, downward? I mean, what are we looking at?
When you say supplemental fund, do you mean the adequacy, the $1.3 million? Is that what you're talking about?
So we've got the BEF, and isn't there an SEF?
That's a special ed.
Special ed.
Special ed,
Okay.
yeah.
So I was reading something today, and it looked like they were calling it supplementary educational funding.
There may be pieces of the entire calculation that are considered supplemental. I mean, there are, but there's nothing that's supplemental. It's the basic ed or the special ed.
Okay.
And we have a 2% increase in the special ed subsidy based on what we saw this year.
And where do we stand as in terms of averages of the number of students involved in special education in the county? Do you know?
I don't have that information off the top of my head, so I wouldn't want to speak about it.
Any other questions from the board?
Well, just in regards to special ed funding, so you were talking earlier about the access funding being related to IEPs.
Mhm.
So am I correct in assuming the more IEPs, the more access funding? Because
I
you
wouldn't
sent-
say that. The calculation's really complicated, so I wouldn't say that because I don't know if that's an accurate statement.
Gotcha.
So of all the positions that Dr. Cartwright went through that are the administration recommends not eliminating,
Mhm.
they're all still included as funded in your projections?
Correct.
Correct, good. Okay, good. Yes, especially, I'm gonna just say it, music and band, I don't see that as an option that I would ever vote for to get rid of elementary instruments. That would set the kids back way too far. That would be a big detriment. My kids are in the band. We take pride in Dover's band. We want that to be a successful program. We see that as a benefit to their education overall. So I'm glad you did include that. That's not on the table at this moment.
Administration's not recommending eliminating any of the positions.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? None? Thank you, Mrs. Weaver. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. Next time on the agenda is 2.02, Northern Regional SRO presentation with Chief Lash.
Figure out how to use this thing. Thank you, everybody, for giving us a chance to just fill you in with what's going on in your schools here. For those of you who aren't aware, my name is Officer Schaefer. I am stationed up at the high school. That is my permanent position up there. I do float around as needed. Officer Englar here does the middle schools and the elementary schools as needed. Just some of my credentials that are up there on the screen. I've been with Northern Regional for almost 9 years now. I'm not going to go over all of those, but some of the important ones is being naloxone certified, known as Narcan. We carry that with us in the schools due to some of the recent drug trends that are taking over our communities here. We have the ability to administer that to students who make poor choices and get themselves into situations where they are going to need it. We have specific mental health training to engage some of our students that require extra attention. Project Lifesaver is another one I'd like to touch on quick here. It's a program that we offer where some of our higher need kids that are flight risks due to autism or other type of needs that they have, they wear special bracelets that have a little tracker in them, and they can be tracked through devices that we have for whatever reason. If they were to run away, which we've had happen, we are able to respond out and locate those individuals rather quickly. We do have numerous kids within our district that are a part of that program, so it's very beneficial for us to be on that response team should anything ever happen. Knowing these kids, knowing their friends, knowing whoever they associate with, it might give us leads as to where to start.
Hi, I'm Officer Engler. I'm at the middle school. I've been with the police department for 6 years. This is my first year at the school, actually. But you can see all my certifications there again. I'm not going to go through them, but same things, mental health training. I actually have education methodology, which is for teaching adults as well. And we are ALICE instructors, which is the new program that we are using for basically called Run, Hide, Fight. But we can teach teachers and all staff in that. Good. Want me to touch on? All right. So what is an SRO? Some of you might not even know what that position really is. A well-founded SRO programs aim to provide safe learning environments in our nation's schools, provide valuable resources to school staff members, and foster positive relationships with the youth, develop strategies to resolve problems affecting youth, and protect all students. A lot of times, Officer Schaefer and me are actually out of our offices. The only time we're in our offices are when we're typing a report that we absolutely need to, or we're sitting with students, talking to them, figuring out what's going on. We solve a lot of crime or stop a lot of crime before it even happens in these schools.
One of the big things here in this is building those relationships with our youth. There is so many beneficial aspects to that, just from the sheer fact of solving crimes within our community, not just within the school. These kids know more information than just about anybody else. They will come and tell us this information, one, because they want to get somebody in trouble who feels they did them wrong. It's solving crimes. They will come and tell us information they think that safety might be at risk. They will tell us. They won't tell other adults why they want to come and tell Officer Engler and I. Beats me sometimes, but we feel as if we're there. We've been told that we're their safe space. These kids are comfortable coming to talk to us. That doesn't happen if you're sitting in your office and not out there talking with kids, figuring out what's going on. Take interest into their personal life. Ask them how their grades are. Interact with them at their athletic events. Show up and do all the extra stuff. Having somebody that just sits in an office, it's not going to cut it. I know Officer Engler did all of the middle school athletic events this year. I tried to take on all the winter athletic events. I don't think we missed one between both of us. And it means a lot to these kids. They see a familiar face there. They want you to show up. Whether they play well or not, they're happy you're there. So it's little things like that that really get that positive relationship going forward. Some other things here that we do, keeping the mindset of staff and students that they're safe within this building. Sometimes just seeing us in the building, these students have flat out said to us and other teachers that they feel safe knowing that there's a cop in their building. Some say they don't know why that we need to be there because everything's going to be safe. But once they learn exactly what more it is that we do, they can be well shaped into understanding that it's more than just protecting violence. Preventing student injuries due to violence and drug overdoses. I'll touch on this a little bit later, but we have had an uptick in drugs within our buildings, and it's a trend that's not a good one. The numbers are increasing. These drugs are getting more potent and more vulnerable, and we're doing our best to try to eradicate that from these buildings. Increasing the likelihood that students will get help that they need. The administration and our counselors at the schools, they have the ability to provide resources to just about anything they need. But there are downfalls that they can't get involved with where they can say, hey, I need some help finding resources for a student. We have another list of resources that we can reach out to certain people and get the ball rolling with certain kids. When certain kids will come in and say, hey, I don't have food at home. That's not really a school-related issue. So, them coming and talking to us about it, we can make some phone calls and try to get these kids what they need. Minimizing property damage, just being present will deter some of that. Reducing the need for schools to call 911. Having us within the district, you're going to get a quicker response time than you would calling 911. If something's going on, we have school radios that connect to all of the districts. All it takes is one person getting on a district-wide channel saying you need an SRO, and we hear that. For you to call in and call to 911, you're looking at a 2 to 3 minute phone call before it even gets transferred to a patrol officer. Then you're looking at another minute or two until somebody actually gets to the building. We are familiar with these buildings, the insides and outsides of them. So you're going to get a quicker response for just about anything within this district. We do have police cars to travel from building to building, and our lights and sirens do work quite well. So, and we have access to our radios as well. Our radios can get through to any other officer that's on the streets working, rather than calling 911. We can get to them in a second or two versus calling 911, and you're looking at that 2 to 3 minutes again. Extra resource for students to express concerns. I'm going to tell this story. I tell it every time I get the opportunity to. I take pride in it. But I had a student when I was back at Dover Intermediate School, back up where the high school was, just doing my usual talking with students. You get to know your students, you get to know their personalities, you get to know their trends, how they talk to people, their body language. I had a female come in one day and she just looked off, and I pestered her all day asking her what was wrong, and I could tell something was wrong. Had no idea what it was, but I knew something was off, and I kept pestering her. She said she didn't want to talk to me about it. I said, I just want to make sure you're okay. Towards the end of the day, she came down to my office and asked if she could talk with me. I said, absolutely. She came in and told me that I was the only person that she trusted because I took an interest into her and talked to her every day like a human being. I said, okay. I said, I appreciate that. That's great to hear. This female had told me that she was sexually assaulted by her father for the last 10 years. And that gentleman is now doing an extremely long term in prison. But the fact that she said that I was the only person that she would tell is a testament to how hard we're trying to work to get to know these kids, to provide them the opportunities, to provide them that safe environment where they can come and relay this information to us. I know Officer Anglar has other stories like this. I have other stories like this as well, but this is one that I hang my hat on. Just to show that we do make a difference, whether it's one student or 100 students. It's important that we made one kid safer just by us being in that building. And I'll take one kid being safe anytime, any day. But enough about that. I'll let him take over here.
So as the SROs, we act as liaison between the community, the school, and even our police department. So again, as we touched on earlier, sometimes we hear things from the students that are happening out in the community. We're able to pass that on to patrol and maybe get crime that's solved by maybe an unsolvable crime because we actually have kids talking to us. We educate staff and administrators about current drug trends. I know I've put on drug presentations for our staff at the middle school. I'm sure Schaefer has done the same. But we're able to find out and use this stuff and show them so they tell us what's wrong with their students if they see something. The ALICE instructor for the students and staff, again, that's a yearly thing that we've been doing now, but it's the Run, Hide, Fights idea. And we provide a direct line of access to patrol officers should a larger response be needed. We actually do help with coordinating building things. Such as at the beginning of the year, we had a bomb threat. I think on the second day of school, we were able to contact patrol, figure out where we needed units, what we needed to do, and how we were moving students so we could get the schools cleared. Do you want to touch on this?
So we do work with the Center for Traffic Safety, ensuring these kids that are driving to school are making right choices, make sure they're driving safely. I had reached out to them at the beginning of the school year. They come out and do a seatbelt challenge where they will send somebody from the Center of Traffic Safety. They will sit in the parking lot in their own personal vehicle, and they will look and see how many kids are wearing their seatbelts as they come into the parking lot. If our numbers are great from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, we are actually in line for a grant. I think it's for $1,000 to be put towards any type of safety needs, driving safety needs. I know it seems minuscule in the grand scheme of things, but $1,000 is $1,000 just for our kids driving safe. So for the beginning of the year when they came in and did the assessment, out of the 100 cars that she counted, 95 of them came through with seatbelts on. They said that was one of the highest numbers that they have ever seen. So our students are doing the right things. I know Officer Anglar and I push hard on wearing seatbelts. We'll stand out at the exit of the school, and we'll politely remind kids to wear their seatbelts as they leave or they see us, and they throw them on quick. So just that simple, whether they see us and throw them on quick or not, that seatbelt's on once they leave that parking lot. School Bus Safety Week, we do this every year. There's a specific day where all of our patrol officers will supply them with school bus stops where we have routine violations, and they will go out and they'll try to catch violators who are failing to stop for school buses that are picking up or dropping off kids. We've been pretty successful with this. I know Officer Anglar and I go out in the mornings before school sometimes, and we'll sit at some of our hot spots, and we have yielded some good results with that as well, catching violators. Those fines are quite hefty, and it makes a point when you're stopped for something along those lines. Team training is just a way we can teach kids. It's a methodic approach to teaching certain subjects, whether it be drugs, whether it be driving, whether it be making smart choices. It was a training that both of us went to and helps us instruct these kids, getting them to understand what the materials we're trying to portray to them in a level that they can understand. We have an explorers post at our station where I like to refer to it almost as like a junior police program. These kids come in, they're required to dress appropriately, they take appropriate action, they have to shine the boots, and we teach them all about the law enforcement world. We have multiple students from Dover that are enrolled in that program and have been very, very successful. I have also taken the high school I'm working with the Vape Free Schools initiative. This is just to get information out and try to get these kids to understand the dangers that come with vaping, some of the consequences that come with them, things along those lines. And there's an education aspect to it that we're looking to try to roll out here as far as these violators that are breaking these rules have to do a little homework to understand better what exactly is going on. You want to do this one?
I know at the high school level, I'm not sure I've done this yet, but we do educate with the sex trafficking. That's very big, obviously. Youth aid panel program, what we call is a youth aid panel. So when students get charged for something, we have the resources to be able to give them a diversionary program. So they have to do some community service, do a couple other things, and the charges will actually get expunged. Am I correct? Yeah, expunge. So in the future, we would like to teach Alive at 25 driver's education, impaired driving seminar for the juniors and seniors, and we already touched upon Project Lifesaver. Another part of the program, I am a CPS technician, which is a child protective seat technician. I'm the only officer in the department that's certified to do so. So some of the lower grades, I can go out and do things with the child protective seats. Earlier this year at Weigelstown, we did hold an event where we tried to have parents come over and get their seats checked. Not many wanted to come, but I did get a couple, and we did check seats, made sure they're installed correctly, and educated them.
I know people see sex trafficking there at the top and think, oh, not my district, not my kids. That is a growing problem. We have had numerous kids that have came forth and shared information in regards to this, and it is a definite, it is happening in your own backyard. You may not be aware to it, and that's why we're trying to put information out there that's going to educate everybody on what to look for, things to look for, the activities these kids are doing, the trends that they're following. Those two pictures right there are why I am pushing so hard with the Vape Free initiative. Those are just from two buildings, the high school and the middle school. That is a lot of vapes. That does not include all of the vapes that contain THC, a controlled substance. None of those vapes are up there. Those are all nicotine vapes that were confiscated. So you can see that there's a growing concern there. Just to touch on some of the nationwide statistics, you can see shootings to date, and that was, I believe, through March 8th, there were 53 school shootings, 53 victims. So, and the majority of the time when that took place were your classes first thing in the morning and at sporting events. I know everybody thinks, sporting events, not a big deal. You don't have to worry about it. For whatever reason, a lot of bad blood gets spilled over between students at sporting events because it's not during the school day. So all of the information that I have here is through March 7th. So we talk about report numbers. What a report is any time that we document something that might involve a crime, whether we talk with a student about making some type of changes or disciplinary action or something along those lines, we document everything. One, so that way it's there should we ever need it. And should we have to go back and reflect with this student, previously if they've done something. Total to date, we've had 368 reports, and we're only through March. Last year, our numbers are actually down, which is a good thing there. As far as I think at the end of last year, we ended up with 800 reports. So we're down a little bit this year, which is good. Hopefully we can get these numbers to keep decreasing due to kids making good choices. And then there's just a breakdown of how many reports were taken at each school. This is pretty staggering. I know nobody thinks that arrests are a good thing in schools, but unfortunately, we have to look at it for what it is, and we have had quite a few incidents so far this year. You can see each chart there is broken down by your traffic citations. So the majority of those, if not all of those, are school bus related. That doesn't take in account to warnings and other things, but the citations are there. Then you can see your high school numbers are in blue, middle school in yellow, elementary in green. But 36 arrests have been made so far in the high school between felonies, misdemeanors, and non-traffic citations. The majority of our misdemeanor arrests come from drug-related incidents. It is a growing concern. These kids feel that they are invincible, unfortunately, and they don't think that they're going to get caught. Once again, these kids come and tell us everything, and when they do, we act on it. Our felony arrests, one stems from our bomb threat early in the year. I'll just touch on that. When we were made aware of that by a student who had came to my office and said, "Hey, I heard this information," we had that kid in custody within 4 to 5 minutes. Call 911, it'll take longer. And, being in there knowing those kids makes a huge difference. And then we had one felony arrest at the middle school for a pretty vicious assault that took place. Any questions that we can answer for you? I know the big boss will get up here and talk with you guys shortly, but we can answer any questions that you guys have.
I'd like to say, really appreciate you guys. Thank you for your protection
you.
of our kids. It means a lot. I've often wondered if there was a school shooter, you have the ability to take them out on the spot.
If somebody is threatening our children in that building, I'm going to be hero or zero. That's how I put it to kids. So it's a grim reality we have to face on the daily, that we're sacrificing our lives for, not even our own kids. But that's why we're there. We choose to do this. So
thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo the thank you for your service and keeping our kids safe. I jotted down a couple questions through your presentation. I've been through Narcan training myself, so I'm aware of the risk that you put yourself in trying to save someone and the liability and stuff. Is there any Narcan training available for staff if they want to do it to just bolster that ability in the school?
there is training available. Anybody can obtain Narcan and how to administer it. I believe we take the same class that everybody else takes.
Okay.
As far as that goes, whether that that's going to be a school question, whether other people can get certified and carry it. I mean, it would be great if that was the case. We wouldn't have to rely on just having our dose of Narcan and his dose of Narcan, which spans in 2 buildings. Most of the time, if we have overdoses, it could be 1 or 2 people. And if we're expending both of our doses of Narcan on one person, that leaves somebody else there. So you can't have enough Narcan in one building.
Yeah, it's a personal decision too, because it's dangerous to use on, especially fentanyl. I noticed on the one slide you had with incidents per school, Live had 32 compared to under 10 at the other schools. I'm not picking on Live. What do you think the cause of that is? Is it like the proximity to West York and maybe kids from other schools coming in, or it's just such a big variation?
So I got the pleasure here. I'm not going to mention any names. There is specifically 1 or 2 students at that elementary school who were creating issues day after day after day.
Okay,
for about 2 weeks straight, I was there every day, sometimes twice a day, for the student.
Okay.
So they have a little bit more of a jump in numbers because of 1 or 2 students.
So it's a repeat offender, not necessarily a broader audience of.
Not exactly. I mean, most of the numbers are pretty spread out between multiple students, but I would say LIAB was focused mainly on 2 students and then probably about 3 or 4 others.
Okay, yeah, we're aware of that situation.
We did get it fixed, so its numbers have started going back down.
In situations like that too, whether we're needed or not, we're there to kind of protect the teachers too, because we have body cams. So having our body cams on when these interactions take place, it helps protect our teachers as well. that way you can't have parents coming in and claiming certain things when, the evidence is right there. It's not just students that we're looking out for, it's these teachers as well. We don't need them getting caught up in some fictitious nonsense, so.
Yeah, and then lastly, I heard that there was a new Northern York police station being constructed in the future.
Correct.
So what would be, I don't know where it's located, so what would be the new response time for that?
I'll answer that.
Okay. Later, all right. That's all I had.
The Dover's got the best score on this slide. Dover Elementary. What do you account that for? Are they doing anything better than the other schools? Just the way the numbers fell out this time.
I would say it's just how it fell out. You always have one bad apple in one bunch. So that's really what it falls down to. I don't think anyone in this school is doing less or different in this district. I think everyone's doing very consistent the whole way through. So
Okay.
it's just one or two bad apples.
Just looking for training issues or?
Nope. I wouldn't say that's a result of
They're
that.
closest to the jail.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Again, we all want to say thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. You know that you are much appreciated, so thank you.
Thank you.
I'll echo that also. Thank you very much. I know it offers a great level of comfort to know that our children are being watched after. So thank you for what you do. We've been to the ball games and have seen you on campus, and we see the relationship you have with the student body, and as well with some of the fans that come to the games as well. So thank you for taking the time to build those relationships.
Of course.
I'm stepping down.
Thank you very much. Chief Lash.
I hope you were clapping for them and not me. But they do a great job, so thank you. Great presentation. Good evening. I'm Dave Lash, Chief of Police, Northern Regional. And last week I had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Cartwright and discuss funding. I know that was an issue that came up last month, excuse me. Policing is expensive. It always will be. We're a manpower or woman power driven organization. So much like in the school district, benefits and salary make up the vast majority of our budget. To determine how much a police officer costs, any one of our municipalities or school districts, we take our total number of our budget, which this year is just over $13 million, and we divide that by the number of officers we have, which for 2024 is 67. And that comes up with a unit cost. A unit cost is what 10 hours of police service per week or 520 hours of police service per year costs. That unit cost is the same for everybody, whether it is a school district, our smallest municipality, or our largest municipality. So that way we can sell services based upon need. So unit cost for 2024 is $48,513.98. So if you multiply that times 4, it costs us just shy of $200,000 to put a police officer on the street. That's everything from their training, their uniforms, their salaries, their fringe benefits, the police cars we drive, the pencils we use or pens we use, thumbtacks, what have you. That is an all-inclusive. And I know the conversation has come up about cost sharing with the municipalities, Dover Borough and Dover Township, and that is already in place. Dover School District pays 75% of the yearly cost of an SRO. The SROs are in Dover School District 75% of the year, 1,560 hours. 1,440 of those hours are tied up during the school year, 180 days times 8 hours. That leaves us with 120 hours per SRO that can be used for other things. And what are we using those other things for? Sporting events. We have either an SRO or a police officer at every sporting event, plays, musicals, any large group activities, graduation, prom, homecoming. We are manning that, and it does not cost the district an extra dime. That's all comes out of that 120 hours per officer or 240 total. So because the school district is paying for 3/4 of a police officer, that other quarter needs to be made up somewhere because neither Drew nor Dave would like me to cut a third or a quarter of them off. So we need to keep them employed year round. So to that regard, Dover Borough picks up 10 hours of your middle school SRO. That's the other quarter. So that's the other unit. Dover Township picks up the other unit of your high school SRO. So the cost sharing that's already going on between the township and the borough, that exists and it has existed since the initiation of the SRO program here at Dover. That's all I wrote down to talk to you, and I'm up here, fire away with questions.
All right, thank you, Officer Lash. Any questions from the board?
No, but I like the explanation that you gave.
Thank you. Mr. McKinney, I can answer your question now if you'd like.
Yep.
First off, and I mean no offense to firemen, we're not firemen. We don't respond from a station. Our officers are dispatched out into our jurisdiction at the beginning of their shift, and they don't return to the station until the end of their shift. Where you potentially lose out, and I don't want to even use the term lose out, where potential changes are force multipliers. Someone like me. I'm at the station. If something bad is going, the bomb threat at Dover, I think Dr. Cartwright and I arrived at about the same time. And, it's going to take me a couple minutes longer to get there, but it does not change the response of patrol.
Okay, good.
So that should remain about constant, regardless of where we're at.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yep.
When are you going to be, your new facility going to take place?
Construction should start sometime in the next 30 days, and we should be in around May of 2025.
And what will happen with the old station?
We'll sell it.
So are we still going to have police protection down through Canal Road where the station currently is now? Is it going to be the similar once you move?
The amount of patrol officers patrolling in Dover Township and Dover Borough will remain the same. Again, it's those officers that are at the station, myself, the lieutenants, detectives who may or be on station. Those are what will be relocated about 4.5 miles away.
And where's the new station going to be?
It's off the 3800 block, excuse me, of the Susquehanna Trail in Manchester Township. So if you take Canal Road out to the Susquehanna Trail, hang a right. It's about a half mile down on the right. You'll see a large construction area. It's the roughest road in the county right now if you drive down through there. But we're on the left-hand side down there. And people have looked at that and said, why there? It's kind of on the edge of our jurisdiction. If you draw a 4-mile circle around the location of that new building, 72% of our calls occur within that 4 miles. So although it may look like it's in an odd place, it's actually well positioned for us to serve all of our communities. And again, we have 60, I count as 68, we have 67 officers. We provide services to 11 municipalities in York County, covering almost 90,000 residents. So we have quite a large jurisdiction.
So you're going to be moving out of Dover School District and into Northeastern School District?
No, we're actually moving into Central School
Central.
District. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Come on, I was all ready. Fire them away. Those guys must have did too good of a job, huh?
Well, they did a good job. There's no question about that. But
I'll just echo the remarks. The district is the community and the community is the district. And what happens in our communities happens in our schools. And what happens in our schools happens in our communities. And having SROs in the building allows us to tie that all together. It prevents crime in our communities. It prevents crime in your schools. And the utmost is the safety of our students. And what Officer Schaefer said is absolutely true, and that's the marching order I give them when they go to schools as an SRO. If something bad happens, you can either be the hero, or when I get there, you better be dead. There's no in between. So we take that very seriously.
Thank you, Chief Lash. Appreciate you. All right. This takes us to our next agenda item, 2.03, presentation by Mayor Hernley, of the Dover Borough.
I don't have any fancy slides. The borough has a very limited budget, so you'll have to pardon me. The reason I'm here this evening is I was looking over the preliminary budget, and there was parts where expenditure savings was eliminating the 2 resource officers. And some of the board members have been on previously. They know I'm here all the time with this one. The main reason I'm here tonight is what would be a potential burden on the 1,954 residents of Dover Borough if the school resource officers were eliminated from the schools. Page 2 of your annual report, which by the way is an excellent prepared report, it gives the resource officers' jobs, which Officer Schaefer and Officer Engler went over very well. I'd say 90% of the time is spent preventing the crime, where 10% is actually, doing arrests and responding to incidences. On page 24 of the budget proposal, which I went through there, it said that if $297,500 could be saved by the elimination of the 2 school resource officers. I used a targeted school district budget of around $73 million, and it costs 0.039% of 1% of your budget for the school resource officers, and that's for 100% coverage from key to key. Dover Borough, our budget for the year is $1,307,000. Our police contract is $341,448, which is 26.2% of my annual budget. We get 7 units of police coverage a week, which is 70 hours, which is 42% of a week. We try to base this off of historical averages, like, crime occurs, overnight in the evenings and such like that. I did have here where Officer Schaefer gave me his summary, but he went over, the number of incidences in the schools. Last year was 818 incidences in the schools, and mine was up to February 20th was 316. The reason I'm bringing these numbers up is 75% of the total incidences and 95 of the arrests happen either in the middle school, which is inside the borough, and the high school, which the high school sits 25 feet outside the borough limits. If you're not familiar, the borough and the township is the middle of Intermediate Avenue. That yellow line is the demarcation line. So if I use those numbers and having the borough coverage used for both the middle school and Dover Elementary plus the high school, and with the average of 818 incidences from last year, that comes up to about 62 incidents a month. So if I'd have to cover those extra hours for police coverage going to the schools, that would cost the borough an extra $6,530 a month, or $78,360 a year. This would entail me to have to increase the taxes in the borough to cover those extra police costs. If we look at the enrollment of Dover Elementary and Dover Middle School, which are in the borough limits, along with the Dover High School, which is 25 feet outside, on any given day, they have a higher population than what Dover Borough has. Dover Borough accounts for 8.1% of your total taxable units in your count in Dover for the Dover School District. We went over the new police station and with where that's going to be moved to. So I can stand up here and give you my opinions and cuts that should be made and that would be regrettable to the student body. However, I don't have those numbers or facts. Any of the numbers we spoke about tonight can be found on the Dover School District website, the York or the Northern York Regional Police Department website, or on the Dover Borough website. As we said tonight, the school resource officer was not really in the for elimination, but if you do, I really don't 1/3 of 1% to cover, or 44 cents per student and staff per day for door-to-door police coverage. So, unfortunately, Chief Lash and Officer Schaefer and Officer Engler, they took most of my words, so we'll go with that.
All right, hold on just a moment to see if the board has any questions for you.
I don't have any questions, but with Chief Lash here, the two officers being here, I was probably the most adamant individual, say 2 years ago, about removing the SROs from the
Oh, I
school
remember
district.
that one.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I actually had a parent call me, one of the fathers tell me, he says, when Chief Lashbrook gave a presentation in here, he said, hell, he might as well have just been talking to you, Dave. He stared at you, looked at you the whole time and everything. But what happened was I ran into a male student, physically much bigger than me, and he made the comment point blank, you need to have that cop in that high school. He said, Schaefer makes a difference. He said, with some of the new students moving into the district, he says some of them are very aggressive. They want to mark their territory, and they are ready to fight. And he said, you need to have Schaefer there, especially during lunchtime. And that is what really changed my mind as much as anything. When this young man was, making these statements, he meant every word of it. And that's why my position has definitely changed. So, yeah.
I like to use the old analogy when we were in school. Every teacher had a paddle at the front of the classroom. You walked into that classroom, you thought twice about doing something, nefarious. So Officer Schaefer and Officer Engler, they are now our new paddles in Dover School District.
So if we do away with SROs, bring the paddles back.
Back to the paddles. And the more holes you drill in them, the better.
Okay.
I'll do the cost analysis on that one.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments from the Board of Directors? Director Whitmer,
I just want to say thanks for coming in.
we appreciate you coming tonight. And I thought you might have some recommendations for us. You've just decided not to provide any recommendations. Is that what I heard?
As far as
places where we can look at budget-wise.
Well, tonight I'm here, because I got on the agenda, to keep it with the school resource officers. So I attended, because that's what we're here tonight. I mean, I'd be glad to get back on the agenda, do some numbers and do some, some words that way. It's up to you guys, whatever.
Okay.
I mean, wherever you want to go. I mean, I'll go wherever you want to go. I mean, I do think there's positions that can be filled within the school district by existing personnel, just by kind of replacing to where you have a need. If you look at the job openings on your website, there's a lot of personnel in other positions that can be replaced. Is it a cost saving? No, but you're going to cover the core, custodial is one of the big things. We need to keep the buildings safe. If they're clean, they're safe for our students. I mean, there are probably places where we can move from one area to the next area to cover those positions. Autistic support, or the ones that work with the special needs kids and such like that. Those are critical. Can we move somebody from one position to the next to take and cover those positions?
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. If you have any additional information to send us, feel free to send it via email or request another spot on the agenda.
Will do.
Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Mayor Hurnley. All right. Before we go to the public comment period, I'd like to clarify an issue raised by a resident at a meeting and again in recent news coverage. Despite statements to the contrary, the attorney Randall Wenger, currently with the Independence Law Center, never represented Dover regarding the Kitzmiller litigation 2 decades ago. Rather, at that time, he encouraged the district and its attorneys to rescind the policy that spurred the lawsuit in the first place. His only involvement later in the case was on behalf of a book publisher and a nonprofit on issues separate from the adoption of the policy. Had the district taken the advice offered by Attorney Wenger and his law firm at the time, which was Clymer Musser of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Dover Area School District would have avoided litigation and the costly result. That points to why we've asked the Independent Law Center to represent us as part of our legal team so we can serve our community in responsible ways and also reduce the risk and liability of school board decisions. All right, so as we go into the public comment period, this will be a 30-minute comment period. Each participant will have 3 minutes for this period to express themselves. The board uses the public comment period as an opportunity to listen but not debate issues or enter into a question and answer session with the speaker. Public comment must be germane to school district business. The board values civil and respectful statements and clear and concise communications that help to inform its deliberations. So at this time, we'll open up the public comment period.
Excellent.
Okay, I'll ask each speaker as you approach, please state your name and whether or not your address is on the sign-in. If it's not on the sign-in, either do that on your way out or state your address as part of your 3 minutes. So I'll recognize the first speaker. Please recognize or
Hi.
state your name.
I'm Kayla McDaniel. I'm a first grade teacher at Waglestown Elementary. And we stand here this evening as proud teachers, parents, alumni, community members, and taxpayers. At last month's school board meeting, during the budget discussion, Director Kindig mentioned that with the retirement of a principal and band director, we may need to think outside the box on how to cover these positions. We are here to speak to the concerns we have regarding not replacing Dr. Strasbaugh, not only for Waglestown Elementary, but for all of the schools in our district. In a school setting, part of what makes a strong, successful team starts with the building administrator. Currently in York County, there are 53 elementary schools. Here are the Dover Area School District elementary buildings rankings. North Salem is ranked 5th, Waglestown is ranked 10th, Dover Elementary is ranked 12th, and Libe Elementary is ranked 23rd. This shows that Dover has 2 elementary schools in the top 10, 3 in the top 12, and all 4 of our elementary buildings in the top 25. By not replacing the retiring positions, it will leave huge gaps that ultimately are going to affect the entire district. This includes students, families, and staff for years to come. This could then have a negative impact on how our district is currently performing with our rankings compared to other schools in the county. We want families and businesses to be attracted to Dover so that our community can continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDaniel.
I'm Brett Young, a first grade teacher at Waglestown, and I'm continuing off of Ms. McDaniel. We understand you have a steep learning curve, so here are the many responsibilities of the principal and assistant principal. First and foremost, they build relationships with every child and their families in their building. Our building administrators know each and every one of our students and families by name. They know their special circumstances and their needs. By taking away an administrator and having them share buildings, this is going to make building relationships and earning trust nearly impossible. Number 2, administrators are the first to run to a classroom or meet a child in the car rider line who is struggling to be in school. That administrator also is a person to check in on that child throughout the day to let them know everything is okay. Number 3, administrators have difficult conversations with parents regarding attendance, behavior, and academics. Who will be responsible for having these difficult conversations and diffusing situations throughout the school day? Can you imagine an upset parent coming into the building only to be told that a principal will return to the assigned building for 48 hours? Number 4, the administrator will be in a may be in a special education class one day helping a child who is overwhelmed and cannot get control of his or her emotions. And then another day is there to celebrate with that child as he or she meets a goal. This builds a strong relationship that is essential to the positive culture of each building and the child's well-being. Number 5, data, curriculum, scheduling, substitute coverage, responding to emails, phone calls, running safety drills, budgeting. All of these fall under the jurisdiction of the building administrators. No one can ever pre-plan an emergency. We have experienced a variety of emergencies throughout the school year, and these emergencies include medical, behavior, weather, and safety. A good example of this would be a student or staff member having a seizure. Another example is a student behavior emergency. Imagine a student leaving the school property. The teacher is unable to leave their own 25 students unattended to assure the safety of the runaway. There are also a variety of weather and safety emergencies that we have experienced where we were not able to make a call without administrators' guidance. On weather emergency days, administrators stay at the building to make sure all students have arrived safely at home and all buses are back to the garage. Decisions have to be made in a matter of minutes. It would be difficult to make these decisions when administrators are traveling between buildings. Our business is educating children and supporting families. That cannot be done if we eliminate the various positions we need to grow our families and children in this ever-changing world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maria Wirtz, and I live at 3052 Jody Lane. First, I'd like to say thank you. After watching the last budget meeting and hearing that you do not plan on cutting the SROs, I am thankful. It means at least this time you listened to the parents who said it was important for their safety. Now, I have heard, if I'm not mistaken, that you have the money to cover out of the fund balance the deficit that we're facing right now. And that being said, you also are looking at an increase in revenue coming into the district over the next few years from new businesses coming in and the possibility of new houses going up. If all of this is true, why are you asking Air Superintendent to cut very critical jobs from Air budget? We need to have every teacher in the classroom. I'm talking about all the teachers, all the subjects, library, phys ed, music, art. If you cut just one of those positions, you are going to be affecting the students. The paraprofessionals, which I don't know if I said that right, they are the staff members that do not just write IEPs. They are also the members who come into the classrooms and assist both students and teachers. They also pull students out of the classroom to give them the extra help they need. Now, I heard this morning something that you guys may not have heard of yet, but it's something I think you should all look into. They are looking at making charter schools the responsibility of the state instead of the counties, which means the states are the one that will be paying for charter schools soon. I want someone to look into it. You got enough of you there, you guys can do it. And finally, in conclusion, I want to say how much my family enjoyed the drama that happened a couple of weekends ago. It was well worth it. Those students, teachers did a wonderful job, and I give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Mrs. Warts.
Good evening. I'm Andrea Stefanovich, and I'm here to read a letter from concerned citizens based on recent decisions. Dear School Board Directors, we are concerned citizens of the Dover Area School District that feel many of the board misrepresented themselves to get the seats they now hold. Over the past year, we heard the term transparency used multiple times throughout public comments and campaign media. Yet now, when transparency is asked of those people that valued it so heavily, all we get is silence. We understand that many of you are new to the position and have a steep learning curve, but that should be even more reason to lean on and listen to those that have the knowledge in the areas that you are unfamiliar with, whether it's through their day-to-day professional careers, their volunteer positions, or as devoted parents and community members. It's been mentioned that you encourage public comment and value input from the community, yet when we do just that, we are ignored. You may say you hear us, but you are not listening to us, which is evident by saying you respectfully disagree with facts provided or proceed with decisions that will only prove to be a further downfall to the Dover Area School District education. We all have high expectations for our district, so seeing those expectations diminish without any open discussion is very disheartening. We are not against you, but we will not support any action that goes against the very foundation of a public education at the expense of our students, staff, and administration. We simply ask for the same respect that many of you have expected of those that helped the position before you. Respectfully, the undersigned. And included with the letter that you'll see, as a reminder, are various quotes from the newest directors about the importance they put on transparency and listening to the public during their campaign. From Director Conley, in our pursuit of excellence, we will be guided by transparency, collaboration, and a relentless focus on what is best for our students. We will listen, learn, and lead with a vision that embraces the future while respecting the rich history of our district. From Director Miller, transparency, that used to be a word. I was like, I don't understand what that means. Now I use it all the time. I really feel like parents should be aware of what is going on in their own school district. They should be able to come to the school board meeting and feel welcome. I encourage you to come. There should be plenty of space for parents, and I want them to feel like they can be heard at the school board meeting. Lastly, from Director McKinney, number one goal is going to be for the school district to be more transparent to the public and to the parents and to the taxpayers, because that's not happening now. You go speak at a school board meeting, they'll tell you, okay, sit down, next speaker, or they'll just go ahead and take the vote doing the opposite of what the public had just said they're against. So we've got to be more transparent and more listening to our public as a school board. Thank you for your time. And I do have a copy of the letter that about 66 people signed.
Thank you, Ms. Stefanovich.
Good evening, school board in attendance of tonight's meeting. My name is Savannah Jackson, and I'm here speaking tonight, among others, to represent myself and what I believe, along with my classmates, which I represent, as a class of 2025 vice president and a band section leader. One of the focuses of tonight's meetings is deciding whether or not to hire someone to replace Mr. Bradshaw's position. While this may seem harmless to anybody who has never been in the band program, to everyone who has, the issue is very apparent. Moving up teachers to fill the spots isn't where the problem lies, but instead it is in the empty positions left behind. If band is not able to start at an elementary level, then the Dover Area Marching Band wouldn't have the title and reputation it does today, or as Mr. Bradshaw says, the best band in the land. It takes years of countless hours of hard work to become a musician, and if we neglect that for children, then the amount of kids pursuing it in middle and high school would drop drastically, as they never had the early onset introduction to it. Music isn't only a career path many of my friends and alumni have chosen, but also is statistically shown to improve a student's success overall. There are so many less write-ups, detentions, suspensions, and issues with music program kids. Statistics show that music education leads to a 20% increase in verbal recall ability among students. Music education helps reduce anxiety levels by 50% in students dealing with test anxiety. 83% of students believe that music education facilitates communication across cultures and languages. If you decide to change the music program to start band and other music programs later in life, you are ultimately not putting the success of the students at Dover Area High School as your number one priority or benefiting the school in any way. I understand the question of budget and debt is then still unanswered, but because I'm only a 17-year-old high schooler, I don't know how to fix it. What I do know from my 8 years of music experience is that we need the music program Bradshaw has built it to be. Thank you for your time, and I hope that what my classmates and I will have shared tonight will leave you with things to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
What's your name again?
Good evening, Dover School Board members. I'm Phoenix Calhoun, and I am speaking today about one of the options that has been brought up to save money, which is not replacing Mr. Bradshaw. As a student who has been in the music program since elementary school and is going to college for music education, this is such an important topic to me. Our music program is what gives me a reason to go to school every day, and it is the same for many others. I created a Google form for students in Dover to fill out, and I'm willing to send all of the statistics to each of you in an email. The main question was, if in band or choir, when did you first join? Out of 85 responses, 87.1% started in elementary school. Elementary music learning is why we have so many band and choir programs today. Another important statistic is out of the 82 people that are not majoring in music in college, only one person said they don't plan on keeping music in their life in some way. I had countless responses under the open-ended question, how has the music program positively affected your life? Even a couple students who aren't in band or choir and have just taken music classes filled this out. Many points that were brought up in this question include having a reason to go to school. It helps relieve stress. It's a safe space to be yourself, making long-lasting friendships, learning leadership skills, helps behavioral issues since they want to stay in band and choir, and many, many more. One of the responses has this quote, "Life without music, to me, is like trying to breathe without air." If the music program is taken away, future careers are also taken away. On every music class Schoology page, Mr. Bradshaw has a list of music-related careers. There are 20 sections, including church music, music performance, legal services, music therapy and healthcare, and so much more. There are countless individual careers under these sections. The music program at Dover is the reason why I am the way I am today. Without music, I would not be here speaking today. But keep in mind, this isn't just about music. This can be said about all extracurriculars and electives at the high school. Every elective is a future career. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Faith Deschaux, and I'm the Class 2025 Treasurer, an Eagle Ambassador, and the Section Leader for the Dover Band. I just would like to say that Dover was named one of the best music communities in America for music education, has won the National Parade Award for the best marching band in Hollywood and Honolulu. Just this year, 7 students participated in the York County Honors Band Festival, along with 3 participating in the district band. Dover has numerous students who participated in YMA, which is a select honor band program that takes biannual concert tour around Europe. This year, around 13 students, including myself, will be performing in this tour, and every single one of these performers started in elementary school. Music education is critical in young children development. There's nothing else I want to say about this topic other than a story that Bradshaw has told us every single year in band. He talks about a story when someone was asking him why everyone in band has 100%. He brought them in and told every single student to play 2 to 3 notes wrong in each measure, and then play them all correctly. And he says, you get 100s in this class because you cannot do this work at any other percent than 100. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Madison Poole. I'm a junior at the high school. I came to tell my opinion on getting rid of the SROs. Officer Engler and Officer Schaefer have made such a huge impact on us high schoolers and middle schoolers and us middle schoolers. Personally, I just think that there shouldn't be a price on our safety. I feel like I can speak for every student in the high school because we all feel safe. We all feel better when we know when Schaefer's there. Schaefer and Officer Engler definitely help us feel better with everything going on in this generation. I know not a lot of it happens in Pennsylvania, but it can. And with Schaefer and Engler there, I know that Schaefer would go out in a body bag before he would let any of us get hurt. And I know that's rough, but I just think that finding 2 people to put their life on the line for kids that aren't even theirs. They have their own families at home, but they're coming to work every day to protect kids that aren't even theirs. That's extremely rare, and I do not think that would be wise of Dover to give that up. So that's basically all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Thank you for speaking from your heart.
Well said, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kiara Austin, and I wanted to come tonight to talk about the decision of not replacing Mr. Smith, our commercial and advertising arts teacher. I'm currently a student in the commercial advertising arts program, and I'm a senior, so I will be graduating this year. So this won't affect me as much as most students. But the 16 students that won't be able to complete the program because we are thinking about getting rid of it really hurts my feelings. I'm very close with a lot of the students, and I know that if they're not able to complete this program, that they're jeopardizing their life come in the future when they decide what they're going to do with their life. I personally wouldn't be where I am without Mr. Smith in the program. I went into high school wanting to be a lawyer, but I'm now coming out of high school wanting to be a graphic designer, and I personally own my own photography business. Without Mr. Smith teaching me what I know now, I wouldn't have the courage that I have to be able to go out in the real world and actually do these things. I currently have several gigs booked for the fall for weddings. I never thought that would happen. I also would like to point out that our district does a lot of in-house printing. sourcing out to other print places is very expensive. I know, I've done my research. So if we source out, we want to be able to have the certain things like we have, like the band t-shirts or the choir t-shirts or the cab t-shirts that were shown in Officer Schaefer's presentation. We also want to be able to have the sticker decals that we have around the elementary schools, and actually in one of the admin office of restrooms, there's a CTE sticker on the paper towel dispenser. We wouldn't have those things without Mr. Smith. And even though Mr. Smith wants to retire because he needs it, we still should have that opportunity to be able to give this position to somebody else. I personally think that this position is a very important position. It's one of the if we get rid of this CTE program, this position, then people are gonna outsource to tech. That means we're gonna have to pay tech to take those students from our district. We're saving money that way if we just hire another teacher. I also think in the long run that if we don't hire another teacher and we outsource all of our print jobs, because the district does a lot of things through Mr. Smith, you basically would be spending the same amount of money to pay a teacher to do those things for you in a cheaper perspective, because you guys are paying for the material and he's just producing it. You're not paying for the labor. I also think it would impact the students that are in Skills USA. A lot of students are very involved, myself as well. And if we took that away from them, we wouldn't have another advisor. We wouldn't be able to fundraise for our skills chapter. We wouldn't be able to have the money to be able to go to competitions like states or nationals or districts. We wouldn't be able to have those opportunities to get those certifications and get those awards for doing the things that we do in school. We are very, very, we have that opportunity to be able to produce these things for students. And I think we should keep that position and rehire somebody else. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Katrina Rothrock, 6836 Pleasant View Drive, Thomasville. Hello. In recent times, we have witnessed a shift in the dynamics within our educational community. The atmosphere has become infused with stress, and the mental health of both our staff and our students appears to be at stake. This is a matter that demands our attention, empathy, and collective action. Recently, there have been noticeable links between the brainstorming of ideas and negative morale, pushing some of our talented individuals to consider leaving. We risk losing valuable contributors who have historically played a crucial role in our district's success. The stress levels among our staff have escalated, evident even in our union meetings, as the mental health of both of our educators and students is becoming a more pervasive issue. There's talk of cutting staff at all levels, administration, professionals, and support staff. However, the truth is previous staff cuts that we have already had have been very detrimental, and we have witnessed the harm caused by these reductions. I propose that we take a step back and reconsider our approach. Instead of further cuts, let's focus on finding solutions that prioritize the well-being of our staff and our students. We need to explore ways to enhance the support systems in place and bring back the essential services that have been lost with previous cuts. By doing so, we can work towards restoring a positive and supportive atmosphere within our district. Education of students is more than just a financial investment. It is a contribution to the community's well-being. While the monetary aspect is important, the impact of education extends beyond dollars and cents. It enriches our community by fostering knowledge, skills, and a brighter future for all. Thank you for your attention and commitment to the betterment of our educational community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rothrock.
Good evening. For those of you that may not know, I am Samantha Roberts, the high school choir director, and this is Mr. George Bradshaw, the high school band director. We wanted to both be here tonight to address the music position that will be open when Mr. Bradshaw retires at the end of this school year. Over the last 3 years, we have already lost a music teacher at the elementary level due to a resignation that the board decided not to fill. Our department is already feeling the effects of our elementary music staff being spread too thin due to this cut. We have 3 music educators at the elementary level. 2 of them are teaching general music and choir, and they see over 750 students every 6-day cycle. Our elementary band director is currently going between all 4 elementary buildings. Our elementary kids already only get a year and a half of lessons before they hit middle school, and then they don't receive lessons at the middle school level at all. And in that aspect, our kids are already receiving less instruction than any other school district in York County. If Mr. Bradshaw's position is not filled and people are just shifted from within, our department would be substantially impacted. You can't have a successful middle school or high school program without the foundations being taught at the elementary level. This won't just affect our elementary program, it will eventually work its way up to our high school program. I could go on and on about the benefits of being involved in music and how so many of our students learn such important skills like teamwork, leadership, and kindness in our ensembles. But if this is about money, you want our high school program to be successful. Between George and I, just this year, we have had over 215 kids in band and choir during fourth period. If that program doesn't succeed and our numbers drop due to cuts at the elementary level, those students have to go somewhere else. You will have to hire additional staff to provide classes for those students. All of our electives at the high school are important, not just the music classes. It is so important that we give our students the knowledge and the skills to explore their interests and become well-rounded humans. Cutting elective courses will limit our students' ability to do that. All of these vacant positions right now are important to the success of our school district, including both administrative and teaching positions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Hi, Lydia Eifert, 3302 Nicole Court. When I was in kindergarten, I experienced the magic of music class for the first time. By second grade, I started to take piano lessons. In fourth grade, I picked up a clarinet and I sang in the school choir, never looking back. For the rest of my time at Dover, I threw myself into the world of music and creative arts, performing in plays, musicals, honors choirs and bands, and every ensemble possible. Music has shaped me into the person I am today, has given me the lifelong friends, and has provided me with once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. My fondest memories come from my earliest to most recent days in the music program, and I have the dedication of the K-12 Dover Music Department to thank for that. I hope all of you were fortunate enough to attend the Dover Drama Department's production of Matilda earlier this month. If you weren't able to make the time to attend, first of all, you missed out on a phenomenal performance, but I'd like to share a quick anecdote about the show. In the musical, Matilda, a girl that comes from a cruel and dismissive family, finds peace and purpose in reading and storytelling. Matilda's love for reading guides her through the challenges she faces and allows her an escape from her troubled life at home. It is what helps Matilda to succeed. While I may not necessarily be escaping a cruel home life like Matilda, music is my reading, my escape from the challenges I face in the real world, and what keeps me grounded. For others, their reading is the CTE department, the sports teams they play on, or the electives they take that excite their minds and give them a reason to look forward to a new school day. In some capacity, these programs provide each person with an escape, a reason to go to school every day, and a purpose. So, I speak to you now as a Dover alum and a future educator, and I urge you to remember that our schools are no longer confined to teaching only reading, writing, and arithmetic. In fact, as I have learned in every teacher preparation course I have taken so far, it is the responsibility of our schools to teach to the whole child, which means considering all parts of a child's life and providing them the opportunity to live as their most authentic self. In eliminating these life-changing electives and programs, you would do just the opposite. Celebrate the opportunity we have for each student to practice the things that they are passionate about. Thank you, and happy Music in Our Schools Month.
Thank you, Mrs. Hudson.
Cindy Eifert, 3302 Nicole Court. Good evening. I come to speak to you as an educator and a parent, a very proud parent of an alumni of Dover Area School District. Both of those roles have brought me insights that I would like to share with you. Within the last year, I have retired from the teaching profession after 35 very rewarding years as a teacher of history in a local district. So I'm one of those retired people on a fixed income. I love teaching students the history of our nation and igniting their love in learning about it. But before I could get them to want to learn about my history class, students needed to want to be in school. Teachers are well aware that it is often not our academic class that makes those students want to come to school. Chronic absenteeism is a problem schools across our nation are currently facing. To quote William Bennett, who was the Secretary of Education for Ronald Reagan, who just recently put out an article, He said many of our kids are missing school because they are not part of anything at their schools that spark their engagement, their interest, and their motivation. Kids, and we saw this during COVID, very much need to be part of something in which they feel they are valued members. The Glee Club, the band, the football team, they need something that gives them a reason to go to school. End quote. I implore this board to not, in attempts to balance a budget, lose sight of the need to keep the programs and electives that motivate our children to go to school. After all, that is the point of all this, educating our youth. Personally, the music program at Dover made the world of difference for my daughter. The impact did not start just in high school. It started in elementary school, when she looked forward to music class every day, when she sang in her first choir, when she picked up the clarinet for the first time. We must keep a K through 12 music program here at Dover. Children who learn to read, to swim, play a sport, play an instrument start at an early age. Those who don't are less likely to learn that skill. Do not deprive these students of a well-rounded education. It is short-sighted to do so. They are our future. We will all reap the benefits from providing them with an excellent educational experience. We will all pay the cost if we don't. And in my last 34 seconds, the comments on taxes. The number one thing people look for when they're buying a house, the quality of the school. The reputation of our school is key. Please stop damaging the reputation of our school, because it's going to come back in taxes, because we're going to not have as many people moving in our district. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
No time for me?
Yeah, oh, we got time for you. Go ahead.
My name is Richard Harner. I live on Blackberry Road here in Dover. I'm 77 years old. I've been a resident here all my life. I was actually one of the first grade class in the new Dover Elementary School in the 52-53 year. And I participated in music in high school and continued to serve in music in church and all. But what I want to talk about is my kids then. That's the next generation. They all went to Dover, and they participated in the musicals and the plays and the marching band, and it was a wonderful experience for them. And they've continued with music in their lives as grown-ups and parents. And 6 of my 8 grandkids are Dover, and all 6 of them were highly involved in all the music programs, including Renaissance, the Standard 12, the marching band, you name it. They were in it. They loved it, and they still very much music is a part of their lives. And as I keep ranging on from these 5-year, all I want for my 75th and my 80th birthday is for all my kids and my grandkids to sing to me. And I know that Dover's good, strong music programs are a reason, a part of the lives and the people that they have become.
Thank you, Mr.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I live on 3731 Kimberly Lane.
What is your last name?
Allen.
Okay.
I don't have anything prepared, but I would like to speak about the replacement of the commercial and advertising arts teacher. I feel very strongly about this, mainly because I am a program completer, or going to be. But I find that if you cut this, it'll do a lot of harm. I don't think it'll do any good. And I find that when we talk about these certain things, there seems to be a lot of greed about the money and not about the children's education. I feel like that's not being put in thought when we decide these certain things. I know that the program offers a lot for students. It gives them real life skills, it gives them physical skills, digital skills, and it provides them a lot of job opportunities outside of school. I also find that Skills USA, Mr. Smith is one of our advisors. Everything he has built would just crumble. It would be pointless at that point. So I find that not replacing it would be more damage than good.
Thank you very much, Ms. Allen. Anyone else? This will bring to end the first public comment period. We have quite a bit more business to conduct tonight. But I do want to say that for public comments, this is probably one of the most well-put set of public comments I've ever heard. Very well put in your presentations and in your demeanor, and we appreciate that very much.
President Connolly, if I can add to that, I'd really like to thank the students who got up with very thoughtful messages for us. I love hearing what you're passionate about. So great job on that speaking and for having the courage to do that. Good job, kids.
All right. We had an executive session right before this meeting tonight for some board training. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 5.01. Looks like we're going to have some folks leaving. I'll pause just for a moment.
Thank you for coming.
Agenda 5.01, the field trip for the High School Skills USA, the State Leadership and Skills Conference in Hershey, Pennsylvania, April 1st through the 5th. Dr. Cartwright, do you have anything to add about that?
Are there any questions about the trip?
Okay, no questions from the board. All right, agenda item 5.02, field trip, High School Skills USA, again to Hershey, Pennsylvania for April 3rd through the 5th. Now, one of these trips, they're both associated. One of them is for some leadership and the other one is for the participants. Is that correct?
Correct. The state officer is involved in the first one, 5.01. So she goes a couple days early to prepare and plan. And then the rest of the group joins on the 3rd, which is 5.02.
All right, any questions from the board? Okay, let's go to the next item, 5.03, field trip request for the high school journalism students to attend the Pennsylvania School Press Association finals in State College, Pennsylvania, April 3rd. Any questions from the board? Okay, just for, as a reminder to the public, this is a planning meeting, so we have reviewed these agenda items, just as you probably have as well. We're just given the opportunity for questions, and if there are none, we move on to the next one. We'll be voting on these next week. 5.04, the Pocono Valley School trip contract for the Dover High School Student Council, May 24th. Any questions on this one? All right, next one, 5.05, clock entertainment contract for the Dover High School Homecoming DJ Services. Questions from the board? All right, next item is 5.06, requisition for textbook purchase, Dover Area High School Pre-Calculus. I won't read the rest of the title. .07, textbook purchase for the business department, the Shelley Cashman Series Microsoft Office 2021. Any questions from the board?
I have a quick question. So are these coming to us because they weren't included in the original budget, or like why are we voting like or discussing this when you could just buy it? I don't know. Like when we buy books all the time.
I can talk about the pre-calc book. We have been running honors pre-calculus. We are changing that. Is that right, Mrs. Basic? We are no longer going to offer honors pre-calculus. Instead, we're offering AP calculus. So that's a brand new course for us. And the AP College Board requires that we have a textbook. So that's a new thing. So that's why you're approving that. And then Mr. Benton can talk about the...
Yeah, I'm good. I don't need further discussion. I was just wondering why you just don't go and buy it like it's a book. I don't know.
The board, I believe, approves all textbook purchases. I think regardless of the amount. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it wasn't approved prior because it's a new thing.
Yes, the AP
Okay.
Calc is a brand new text for a new course, and the other one is just an updated because the old one doesn't apply any longer.
Okay.
Okay, so we've already talked about 5.07 or introduced as, before I move to the next one, were there any questions on that one?
No.
The Microsoft Office purchase. All right, 5.08 is collaborative classroom quote. This is related to the presentation that we received from the group of teachers. Is that not correct? That's correct, right?
Are there any questions?
Any questions from the board?
I do have a question in regards to the quantity of the items. Somebody break it down for me. Just how what the numbers correlate to, like how many teachers or like groups of like teachers sharing. Each teacher gets something.
Yes, those are the number of teachers that teach in those particular grades. So we have 10 kindergarten teachers, 11 first grade teachers. So every teacher has to get their own package.
Oh, so the CPK is kindergarten. That's the end of the item number.
That's correct.
Oh, gotcha. Now that all makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if I recall, this is just an initial package purchase. So there'll be a one-time, and then we only need to purchase consumables after that.
That is correct.
Okay.
For at least 7 years.
And that was the cost over 7 years. You remember what that total cost was?
It was about 400,000 and something. I don't remember off the top of my head.
And this was compared to several other courses that you looked at, and I think you said last time this was one of the cheaper programs?
Correct. The other one that we were really interested in would have been over $600,000 for 6 years. They only gave us a 6-year term.
Okay. Is there any existing curriculum that we could use for part of this, or do they have to be, this is the reading and writing one, right?
Correct.
So could you do just the writing component separate and save money, or just the reading?
The current reading program that we are using is sunsetting, and it is no longer available. So we couldn't purchase it if we wanted to. We couldn't renew it if we wanted to. So if we don't purchase this reading program, you are effectively leaving teachers without a resource to teach reading.
But regardless, we'd have to purchase new curriculum.
You have to give the teachers something, yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I have a question in regards to just the teachers and the amount of materials that they get. Is it unheard of to have teachers share a manual to cut back on costs? That's unheard of.
Yes,
like somebody
because they
can do a chapter, like get their things together over the summer, and then they, prepare ahead of time. Like
no, because they mostly teach language arts at the same time. So they can't share those materials. That would be incredibly burdensome on them. They can't take them home. They can't lesson plan. They can't have their materials in front of them while they're teaching. That would be, is it possible? Anything is possible, but it would be incredibly burdensome.
I guess the comment that I made privately and I'll make it publicly, it's unbelievable how much these companies are charging school systems for materials related to curriculum. Over time, we're looking at a $700,000 investment here. If every district in York County did that, we're talking $10 million to deliver this course, this training. And over the state of Pennsylvania, we're looking at like $380 million of costs that go to one company alone. And this is only one course. So that's,
Yeah, it's two. It's reading and writing. But yes, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a companion course.
Yes.
But any other questions from the board?
So what about the portal part of it, the tech part of it?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to itemize our options? And
there is not. The tech component comes with the package.
Yeah.
If you try to, I spoke with them over the weekend. If you try to purchase these more a la carte, you won't get the learning portal. And that learning portal is one package. You can't separate the different pieces of it. So we could purchase manuals and the decodables and all of that a la carte. It'll end up probably costing more, and then you wouldn't get the learning portal.
But we don't have a quote for anything without the tech part. We have the quote with it.
I'd have to ask the pilot teachers if they would even be able to teach the program without the learning portal.
So the portal is more than just the kids logging on at home and reading a book at home.
Yes, I'll talk to that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Come on up. If you would, come to the mic to do that.
I'll let the expert talk.
Yeah. I'm Wendy Bear. I'm the 5th grade ELA teacher at Weigelstown. The portal provides the teachers with a lot of the digital things that we need to instruct the students. It has our family letters. It has a lot of the checklists, the conference reports. It has the tracking systems that are not part of the manuals. It gives us resources of videos. It gives us online training for certain things we're teaching. We can watch webinars and videos that help us with instruction to see what the different components should look like by having it modeled in video form for us. So actually, it's the teachers who utilize that portal more so. The students, I know at the lower elementary, they are more resources. At upper elementary, it's more for the teachers themselves. So it goes along. The manual itself is the day-to-day lessons, but the portal provides us all the external things we do to make those lessons come alive for the students.
Thank you.
The iPads are used for this, right? Is that correct? Yes. For the students? Yes. So do the students in these grade levels take the iPads home?
Yes, at different.
You go ahead.
Times. We don't have them taking them home every day.
Yeah, this really, very much like Mrs. Bear was saying, the text itself is not delivered explicitly through technology. It's through the actual text, paper, pencil, the books that the students are using. They can access in the lower grades the decodable text on the iPad. Sometimes it's just easier with kids moving around the room and sitting in flexible seating types of things. But those texts are also available in paper pencil. So I would say it's less driven by the iPad and more driven through text, actually hands, paper, pencil, text. There is, both on the teacher side, there is a component for students, but quite frankly, like what we're finding from a literacy side, the paper is the best version. When you're reading for enjoyment, Kindles and things, it's great to be able to whip out your Kindle and read for enjoyment, but when you're reading to learn and then reading for information, annotating and doing all those things, they need to be doing it paper pencil. So yes, there is a tech piece to it, but that is not the primary focus. The primary focus is on the traditional paper, pencil, books, those kinds of things. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So I'll go back, since you put it that way, to Director Whitmer's question about how integral that portal is. I can see from the teacher's vantage point, it's integral, because
Yes.
you want to be able to see what everybody's doing.
Yes.
But from the learning standpoint, it sounds to me like it's the skills of the teacher, the value of the curriculum, the response of the students. That's the value there. The portal is not as big a part of the learning as the other factors.
From face value from a student, yes. But the support for the teacher to implement those things, I could go on, as you probably saw last month, we could go on, and I'll try not to do that.
what that portal is going to allow teachers to do is have the support to implement some new learning strategies. And the videos, I can say from like educational leadership, we'll be able to sit down with teachers and talk about very explicit teaching techniques and how that resource is using those techniques, because it is shifting our pedagogy and our methodology and how we are instructing and using those collaborative approaches. So from a student side, they do have like slides that are pre-built to take you through the lesson, and it will present components of the lesson. But we've also found that teachers are taking those and obviously making them theirs, which is what we want. We want it to work for them. So they're taking what is being provided and then editing or revising that to make it flow for their learners as well. So it's kind of both, but it is mostly focused not on sitting there and projecting a PowerPoint or a slideshow. It's about the conversation that we're having, the text that we're using. The learning portal is giving the teachers, as Mrs. Bear was talking about, the ways to do that. That's very different than simply just, let's read it, ask some very surface level comprehension questions. We're really having to dig much deeper into those texts. And that learning portal is giving the teachers the training and the resources to get to that deeper level of thinking and learning. So I know that's a lot of words to try and express what that's really the purpose of that learning portal is.
Okay, I appreciate that. Director Whitmer, does that also address your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Have
Director
teachers
Miller.
already been using mentor texts all along? Or is that something new?
I would say it depends on the teacher, but from the resource that we're currently using, it is new. It's the traditional anthology stories, and we're reading the story out of that anthology. I can tell you from the being a writer perspective, it's extremely new. Looking at how a writer is using figurative language and then having students use that kind of thing into their writing. So you're familiar with that. And it's taking that same concept on the being a reader side. So I would not say the anthology texts are mentor texts, they're stories that the kids are reading, and we're trying to incorporate literacy skills through those stories. These truly are mentor texts like you think of when you think of the writing side of mentor text on the reading side. So we're using text, but I would not equate it to like the mentor text as you would phrase it in the education speak.
So like the writing process, is that something that's already been taught before being?
Currently?
Well, before being a writer is being used, the writing process was already taught.
I would say very loosely.
Okay.
Currently writing from a process writing standpoint, editing, publishing, incorporating those skills that they learn from those mentor texts, loosely would be the way I would describe where we're at right now. Much improvement is needed in that area, which this resource is definitely well suited for doing that.
So you feel the teachers would have fidelity towards this program or both programs. And I say that just because I've been other places where we've purchased a program, spent big bucks, and used it a year or two, and then it wasn't being used. So
I would, and Dr. Howe can speak to that too, as our district-wide expert, but I can say from the building administrative level and hearing from the teachers, absolutely, 100%. I think what we found from the pilot teachers on the being a writer, teachers have been asking for help, quite honestly, and a resource that's much stronger than what they have. They have just grabbed hold of that with two hands and are loving that. The reading side of things is that shift we kind of talked about in the presentation. That's where the learning portal is going to be really important to really help teachers make a shift in the instruction. But it's quite honestly, using look-fors, instructional look-fors that we have established, and they're actually created by Collaborative Classroom on what it is that we're looking for throughout. So obviously it's a process. Nothing's going to be perfect in the first year or two of implementation. But I think by year 3 of implementation, we're going to have some benchmarks of things we need to see classroom library-wise, independent daily reading-wise, what does small group look like, primary versus intermediate. So there's going to be benchmarks that we're going to want to see after year 1, 2, and definitely by year 3. You know, when you're into the 3rd year of a program, you should be pretty much doing that with fidelity. So
reading workshop, is that, I mean, that's what I call the IDR. Is that something that hasn't been used as?
So for the small group, I would say that's been up to the individual teacher. I would say some are using that model more regularly than some others. This really brings everybody across the district, whether it's North Salem 2nd grade or Live 2nd grade or, you know, Weigelstown, Dover. That's going to look much more uniform than what we're currently seeing throughout the district.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can I ask another question in regards to the reading books that the kids are actually using? They stay in the class. They don't take them out of the class. They stay there.
So yes and no. If we're using a mentor text, you've heard of mentor text. A mentor text is sort of that anchor text that the teacher's using, reading, we're having conversations. That is 1 copy per classroom. When we get into small group time, the decodable text in the younger grades, the IDRs, those are texts that can stay or may go home. Some of those are accessible. All of the small group decodables for K1 and 2 are accessible on iPad. So if teachers are electing to send those home, they could send the iPad home. The student could practice that with the iPad or with the text. So it depends on the text that we're talking about. If it's a small group text, if it's a independent daily read text, the anchor texts themselves that are being used in the whole group session, that would be 1 copy that would stay in the classroom with the teacher.
My concern was just what is the condition of the book going to be like at the end of even the first year, and what opportunities do we have to replace the books that could be really battered, lost, you know, never make it back, like through this agreement? Are they gonna replace, like, at the cost we're paying? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, so the anchor text should be in very good shape because the teacher is keeping them and they're not passing them around, and the teacher is using those. So the anchor text should be in very good condition. I would say the small groups, they're only using them for a few sessions and then being recollected. So the current text that we have, there are some small group texts that came with our current program journeys. We have book rooms. Those are in and out of that book room used by different grade levels, and they're surviving very, very well. So they're with the teachers. If they are sent home, there's a black and white, almost copier version that we could reprint ourselves instead of having to buy, a bounded book kind of thing. That's the K1 and 2. Those texts are owned by Collaborative Classroom, so they have the rights. We can reproduce those decodables. So like if they want to send a decodable home, we would send the more copy paper kind that could be easily just reproduced out of our own offices kind of thing versus the actual text that we wouldn't want to see ruined or destroyed. Yeah.
Do you charge families for lost or destroyed materials? I mean, if your kid loses it or destroys it, we charge that normal wear and tear. We wouldn't, but if you lose a book, we charge families for that. Mm-hmm.
But I would say the books in our book rooms that are in and out of that book room regularly are still in very good condition. The teachers make sure we take care of them.
How old are those books?
Some were just purchased within the last year. Others have been there for 5 years, 8 years, longer than I've been in the district for 4 years. So that library has existed pre-me. So I don't know when all of them arrived in that library, but I'm just guessing. I'm sure there are books in there that are 6, 7, 8 years old.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. All right. We're on agenda item 5.09, the best interest determination and transportation procedures plan with York County Children, Youth, and Families, CCYA. Anything you want to say about this, Dr. Cartwright?
I'll answer questions.
Any questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. ProCare Therapy, agenda item 5.10, contract.
Mrs. Jacoby would like to talk about that.
So we have contracted all of our speech and language services through the IU. Unfortunately, the IU has had trouble staffing our speech and language pathologist. So this year they began fully staffed. We had 3 service people that would come and service our students. Within the first 2 weeks, one of them went out on a leave of absence and then substantially quit. Instead of returning. The other 2 were able to pick up part of her caseload as no replacement had been able to be found in October. A full-time speech language pathologist also, a second one went on FMLA, and the IU is finding someone to take part of her caseload. As of Friday, it was also the last day of our third one, who had been a long-term speech and language pathologist who resigned from the IU. So currently there is also no replacement for him. So the IU supervisor who's in charge of this area has only been partially successful in finding replacements, and those have only been virtual. Several candidates have begun the IU onboarding process, but then changed their mind. There has been no in-person candidates applying at all. Ultimately, Dover Area School District is responsible for providing these services to the students. So we have, Dr. Geyer and I have been working together on working with some third-party vendors to provide those services either in-house or virtual. Most of them are looking like it's going to be virtual. And so the contract you have is one of the companies that we are currently have us scheduled to interview someone tomorrow so that we can start providing services to our students. We have about 88 students between Dover Elementary, North Salem Elementary, Weigelstown, and high school who have been identified as having a speech and language impairment that have IEPs. It's through their IEPs, so we must provide this service. At this time, we're looking to also offer services all summer in order to make up for these lost sessions during the school year. Each contract is, while the contract is the main contract for each one, as we hire or contract with a specific individual, we get an assignment contract for that person, and that is what determines the rates and what our guaranteed hours are. So we have put out to them that we will take someone 40 hours a week in order to keep these services going so that we can maintain the level of coverage that's required by the IEPs.
So on that, it mentions an amount, $22,500 or 35%, whichever is greater of their annual salary. So does that leave it open-ended to what our charges will be?
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, this is the direction speech and language pathologists are going. Most of them are going to contract services because they can get a higher rate, and we are at their mercy. So I have been working with ProCare and 2 other services for probably about 3 or 4 weeks now, and I just have my first candidate that we're going to interview to hopefully provide services, which is why I also think the IU has been having trouble too. A lot of districts have brought this position in-house because they've been struggling to fill it. So this is a temporary solution. We are hoping the IU can find candidates, and obviously at that point we would switch out of the vendor contract, but until that can happen, we're trying to fulfill our district requirement of fulfilling these services.
Truth is, as long as these companies are striking contracts, these candidates probably won't work for the IU, right?
It is a huge concern.
Yeah.
It is a huge concern.
So this is like a shift in the way we're doing business?
Yes, yes.
Mrs. Jacoby,
Yes.
you said 40 hours a week is what we're asking for in the contract? And
Yes,
then we're
up
doing,
to.
and we're doing, what did you say, a virtual?
So most of the speech and language pathologists want to do it virtually. So the students get onto an iPad, normally in the building office, and they work via Zoom with a speech pathologist virtually. So
One student
one
at a
student,
time.
yes, one student at a time, one-on-one.
I'm trying to picture what that would look like. So across our district, we have 88 kids in all
Mhm.
these different buildings.
Mhm.
And this, you think there'll be more than one person or one
Yes.
person?
I mean, ideally, it took 3 people from the IU to service all of our students. So our goal would be to continue to hire enough through the vendor that we are providing these services. It could be up to 3, it could be 4 if someone can only work 20 hours a week. That's what we have to see. It depends on each candidate.
So you're going for the hours and then however many needs to fill
It's
the
just
spot?
for this one candidate. I have offered 40 hours to them.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have much more hours than that. I could probably hire 3 full-time candidates.
And then when you say you want to continue it through the summer, is the contract that we're looking at going to include the summer? It's because that's a whole nother that's a whole nother school year, right? When we get to the summer.
We would look to continue it on through June, and then if we would need July, then we would approve a new contract.
A new one.
And this is a case where a student needs to be on an IEP to be able to get these services, is that correct? They're shaking their
Yes,
head.
every student who
Sorry.
receives speech and language services has an IEP for speech and language.
And I don't know a lot about this, but I understand that they're training this virtual method in college now. Is that so? So is this the way this industry is, or these services are trending towards doing it with the cameras? And how many cameras do they use?
I do not, when I have seen it occur, I don't know if any of the principals have seen it that are here. I've seen it, it's just the student is in front of their computer and they're working one-on-one. It's very much like a Zoom, like that's how they're working one-on-one with them.
Okay, so it's just a front. I didn't know if they needed, to look at them from the side, the way their mouth is.
That I do not know. I do not know that, unfortunately.
Okay.
One more question, please. In regards to the summertime, since we won't have school, like what does that look like for them? You said they would come to an office normally.
That is
So-
what Dr. Geyer is going to be working on. She was just letting us know that this very well could go on to the summer because we owe hours to these students who are not currently receiving services. So very similar to ESY or things like that. Sometimes we have to continue services. How that exactly looks, I don't know if we've decided that far yet. And let's hope the candidate that we're interviewing tomorrow sticks with it and we actually have a candidate. So that's my bigger concern. So. But that's why we put the contract on, was that as they continue to source, then we're able to start working with them so the students aren't without services. So.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next one's 5.11, the PCCD grant equipment, B&H Photo.
Mr. Perkins, would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've done is in the school district a couple years ago, we procured a number of cameras throughout the district. Actually, when I started in my position, there were 6 cameras at the high school total. And we won't get into all the theories and all that as to why we need cameras and stuff tonight. So we have these cameras. They've been around for a number of years. And just like everything, they're starting to go away. Licensing is due. We have 5-year licenses. And to pay for those licenses for those cameras costs more than buying new that only will have a one-time license that Mr. Boyd we'll talk about it next month. So one of the things we looked at was, is it worth replacing the cameras or is it worth renewing the licenses for these cameras? And the cameras are already old. They don't have all the new technology that some of the newer ones do for a variety of reasons. So what I did is when I saw the PCCD grant for the Meritorious Award, went ahead and said, you know what, this makes the most sense to get the most bang for our buck, since we can't do a supplantation with any salaries or anything like that. So it was just a way to save money and do what we needed to do.
Any questions on this contract?
So there's 85 cameras. Is that for all over the
So,
district? Or?
yeah, so what Mr. Boyd and I did is we looked at everything in the district. And the original grant that we wrote it for was for 53 cameras. That's what we need to do the interior of the middle school, period. So I threw out all the specs to the 4 vendors and just said, okay, this is what we're looking for. What can you do for us? And then for lack of a better word, just went back and forth between the different vendors and said, they're offering me this, what can you do? They're offering me this, what can you do? So it got us to 85 cameras with the proposal that I put before you. What that will allow us to do is cover the interior of the middle school and 2 elementary schools. Whereas before it was just going to be for just the middle school itself. And then we got to look at doing, high school is pretty well covered interior right now. We've been kind of chipping away at that one. And then it would be the 2 other elementaries that we need to look at. And we'll just look for more grant funding.
So how do you decide what school district or school?
We have 85 cameras. What can we do to cover the most area at the most schools? So then the principals aren't flipping between 2 or 3 different systems trying to find something. And just based on numbers, it looks like we have definitely 2 elementaries we can cover for sure. And then we'll shift other cameras around if we need to.
The PCCD grant funds this 100%?
100%.
Great, good job.
Yep, thank you.
Do we have the entrances to the restrooms, not in the restroom, but the entrance to the restroom?
Yes,
covered
sir.
With cameras?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Entrances to restrooms, buildings, doorways. We're pretty well covered. Not perfect, but we're getting there.
Any other questions? Have you used this company before?
Yeah, we did. We bought some for the high school, and they're very reputable. Mr. Fluke actually has dealt with them in other school districts as well. Same with Mr. Boyd. So they're just one of the national vendors that are out there that's decent, reputable, provides a good price.
Excellent.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks.
No, thank you, Mr. Perkins. Right. Next one is agenda item 5.12, the policy second reading. Any comments, questions?
On policy 202, where we talk about, or the policy talks about not admitting students from outside the school district. Reading through the summary provided, it talks about students that are currently transferred in. What happens in that situation? Are they grandfathered, or if we were to adopt this new policy?
Dr. Cartwright?
As I mentioned in our agenda planning meeting last week, I think there's typically an exception to every rule, so we would have to take those applications on a case-by-case basis. But at this point, I would definitely grandfather anybody who's already here and wants to stay.
Can we get a number of how many we might have? Do we?
I think we have 2 students paying tuition from Washington Township right now. And Mr. Benton was in the room. I think we have, there he is, 2 or 3 students from other districts paying tuition. 2, thank you. So they're not big numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I
Yes,
have
Director Whitman.
2 policies that I would like to just kind of go back and forth about some things. The first one, well, it's the copy of the public comment and board meetings policy. That's the title.
That's the ones in the first reading, so we're still in the second reading.
Oh, I skipped ahead.
5.12.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, no problem. No other questions or comments on the second reading policies 5.12? Okay, let's go to the next one, District Health Plan, Health and Safety Plan 5.13.
Because we receive ESSERS funds, we are required to update this plan every 6 months. So this is our 6-month checkup, and there are no changes since September. And I'm hoping this is the last one we ever see.
Any questions? Hearing none, we'll go to 5.14, the Dover Library donation request.
This is a request that has been made by the library and/or the district has donated to the library without the request for several years, is my understanding. And I am of the opinion that we are not in a position to be donating as a not-for-profit organization to another nonprofit organization. And that's what I say in the public content. But obviously, that's for the board to decide.
Any questions, comments?
I'm just curious what year we started donating.
We found records back to 2018.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it wasn't happening before that.
Okay.
We found records back to 2018.
I understand.
I'll just state that I have the same sentiments that Dr. Cartwright has about this. Charitable organizations supporting other charitable organizations doesn't make a lot of sense. All right, I should say nonprofits. Agenda item 5.15, 2023-2024 IDEA Section 619 Pass-Through Funds Agreement with the Lincoln Intermediate Unit. Dr. Cartwright, can you enlighten us on that one?
Mrs. Weaver might do a better job than I.
Okay.
That you approved something very similar to this already. This is just a smaller version of it.
We're still having trouble with that link. This was the one we had trouble with.
No,
Anybody
this
else
is
able to open that one?
no. This is it's funding through IDA. It's passed through Lincoln Intermediate Unit. I believe it was January where you approved it. It's just revenue that we apply against our Schedule A. This is just there's two grants. It's just a smaller one, the smaller grant.
Okay. Yeah, I'm talking about the link that's attached to the agenda. It's not opening. Is anybody else having problems with that?
I don't have a link to the agenda. All I have is the IDA document in a PDF.
Okay.
It's not opening. We can probably remove that one and start over
Yeah.
and make it available.
All right. Any other questions on that? All right. Next agenda item is 5.16 bills paid. This February check register. I'll ask our treasurer, Director McKinney, to talk about his review of this.
Okay, well, I have been sending Ms. Weaver questions as I find them on the check registers, and she has got me caught up through January. So I have not completely reviewed this February one yet, but I will email her any questions I do find then.
Okay. All right. Any questions?
Is True North Wellness covered with this PCCD grant totally? Or are we paying some for that too? I just know there was a check that said True North Wellness PCCD grant, $6,204.51.
I think that's referring to the SAP counselor, and that is being paid all through the grant.
So, okay.
Yes.
So it's included in as a check, even though a grant is paying for it. Am I getting that right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the pass through you're talking about. Is that how you're referring to that?
No, this is something different. For any type of grant we receive, you have to record the revenues and the expenditures. So even though we're receiving revenue, you have to record both.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the February bills paid? All right. Next is 5.17, Treasurer's Report. I'll ask our treasurer if he's had an opportunity to look at this. If not, hopefully he'll give us that report next week.
Yeah, I'll provide that next week then for you.
All right, sounds good. Any questions?
Just had a question about the amount of high school student activities fund. It's $154,000. Seems like a lot of money to me. Is there a reason that there's that much in the ending balance of $154,000?
I think it's all high school clubs combined, correct, Mrs. Weaver?
That is correct.
And so from that fund is where, like, covering the cost for Matilda would come from?
No.
No?
I think they have their own budget, don't they? Drama?
department?
They do, but I mean, I can't say that there's not some student activity that does assist in funding that
I just
without
saw
looking
all,
at it.
I'm sorry, I just saw all school play and I was thinking that that's what that was for. So like field trip money, is that coming from here, like to help pay for field trips?
It
or-
might, it depends if it's student fundraising is paying for certain trips, different clubs, different groups. Please do.
Yep.
Come on down.
Okay, so I run several organizations at the high school, the class of 2025, competitive academics, SAD, and I've done other ones as well. So a lot of the funds, like we have $3,400 in the class of 2025 right now. So that goes to pay for the deposits for prom. It goes to pay for, once we sell the tickets and stuff, it is going to go into our account. So you'll see actually like $20,000 go into it, and then $20,000 get drained out of that one. So that it is all of the student activities in there as well. So that's just a clump of them. So like all of the different clubs, that's what you're seeing. And then yes, we use that money to do our activities and stuff. So like next year, the class of 2025, we have to pay for graduation. We have to pay for the class trip. We have to pay for our senior class gift, all of that stuff as well. So we use that money, and it's just collectively one lump that you're seeing.
So this is funded, am I correct? This is funded through student fundraising?
Yes.
Okay.
And some of it I know is also parking fees.
Ah,
So just, I know that. But with like the classes fundraise and stuff.
thank you.
And so
So-
there, I'm sorry.
Oh, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
So that would not be on what we're seeing for February because there's been no activity with that. Is that
I don't actually know that answer. I do know that there's probably something in there for like $700 to a DJ that went, yeah. So that is part of coming out of like the class of 2025. And like March, you're going to see a lot going in and out because we have to pay for prom.
So this account has $154,000 in it now, but we started the month at almost 154,000. So about what comes in goes right back out in the same month. We're new to this. So where did that balance build up to 154,000? Does that start the year with a lot of money in that account, or is it
It's-
depleted at the end of the year?
It's a rolling amount. It all depends on what activities are done, when they're done. It varies. It's not an unusual amount as far as I'm concerned from other districts.
May I ask one more question in regards to that? Is this the account where, for instance, a teacher needs to collect a fee for materials in a class from a student, that money, she's saying no, that money goes in, no, to a different account then. So it's accounted for the teachers when they need to buy their science kits, whatever they might need. You don't know.
I'm not sure what your question is.
So the clubs, the teachers that might need to collect a fee for the class, such as like a workshop class, the middle school, like when you did woodworking or whatnot, you had a project, and you need to supply the money for that fee of that project, and that money gets collected. Does that go into account?
No, that's not a student activity account. That would have a separate account for fees collected.
That is correct. It's in the general fund.
General fund? And then the clubs, probably the same thing?
Clubs go into the student activity account.
Student activity.
Clubs are not curricular.
During the day clubs, like school hour clubs. Like the middle school has clubs.
No, they don't have accounts. They just call them clubs. They're not the same as high school clubs. They don't have money.
There's no money collected for those clubs?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's Dover UCC donation. What, any idea about that?
Sounds like a church, but I don't know.
That's what I thought.
I can look into it, but I wouldn't know off the top of my head.
Mrs. Weaver, I just had one question on the receipts section of the budget. The transfer from the Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund, $4 million. Was that a regular scheduled disbursement, or was that done based on need, or?
It's done based on my cash flow analysis.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, all right. 5.16, and I'm going to go ahead and, I'm sorry, 5.18. 5.18 through 5.23 are all personnel related. We can take these one at a time, or if any of you have any questions on individual items, we can certainly do that as well if you want to go through them one by one.
President Conley, just a clarification on, I'm not asking you, clarification on 5.18. It says F&S drivers. Should that be E&B, or are we going a different company with that?
We need to use F&S services on occasion.
Okay.
In 5.22, does that take place in when?
July 1st.
Okay.
Dr. Strasbaugh's here through the end of June.
Could we have some comments from Mr. Kromka, or is he not
I
interested?
think he's gone.
He left. I saw it.
Well, I'll give you a comment or two. Students I know who've interacted with him, they like him. They say he's personable. He'll talk to them in a decent manner. They have a lot of regard for him, a lot of respect.
Good to hear.
I can second that.
Any other questions on the personnel actions? All right, 5.24, extended school year appointments, July 2024.
This is for students with IEPs, and in their IEP, it is decided that they need extended school year to maintain their academics to start the following school year. So it's a small group of students. We do it every single July, and we need teachers to do it.
And so the speech pathologist would be joining that group if we have one? Is that?
Not necessarily. I think that will probably get worked out with individual parents.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions on 5.24?
So these specific teachers are only for IEP students.
Just for the month of July, the extended school year hours. It's like summer school. I mean, putting it simply.
To date, do we have any other teachers available for summer school for basic ed? Or we don't know?
I don't know that answer. I don't know that we're looking for teachers at the moment either.
We do have about, don't quote me, but about $25,000 left in the grant for summer school. So we're doing that for our K1 and maybe second grade students who are already Title I students to kind of beef up their reading. So we are looking for teachers to do that for summer school. And that's usually the reading specialists, and we usually don't have trouble getting them.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So these appointments, they are already in the proposed budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Always. We have to do it.
Okay, any other questions? 5.24. All right, 5.25, correction to July 2023, 23.24 school year athletics and extracurricular reappointments. It's listed there on the item. Any questions? All right, next one, 5.26, non-resident tuition student. An application. This, that last page is turned sideways. Does that have your recommendation on the last page?
I'm adding it in right now.
All right.
I did put my recommendation in my Friday weekly report to the board.
Yes. Any questions on this one? Are you posting that online? Is that what you're doing? Okay.
I am putting it in executive content.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you for doing that. The superintendent's recommendation will be in there online, probably as you refresh.
Yep.
It's in there now. No further questions. We'll go to the next one. 5.27 DAE or DAEA MOU, Skills USA Advisor. This is a confidential personnel matter. We were briefed during executive session. On a portion of this, we will probably have to have another executive session to discuss additional details. Did I state that correctly, Mr. Pratt?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. The next item is 5.28, DAEA grievance number. It's listed there. I won't read it, but this is also going to be dealt with in the executive session on March 19th. Minutes for February 13th and February 20th are, let's see, are they attached? Oh, the view minutes, under the view minutes tab up at the top. Any questions or comments related to those? If you want to examine those in more detail when you get home, we can always email those into Mrs. Almond, and she can make those corrections before it comes before the board for a vote. Anything to add? Any questions? Okay. Next agenda item is under the discussion items, policies on 6.01, the agenda item for 3 policies, policy 105.2, the exemption from instruction, and then policy number 106, guides for plan instruction, and policy 903, public comment in board meetings. Any questions or comments on either one of these policies?
Yes, Director Connolly, I'd like to discuss the exemption 105.2 just for a second. And I just noticed that in number 3 under guidelines, it says, well, this is after the written request for exemption for the student is handed in and things are in place. So it says it shall not be the responsibility of the district or any of its employees to ensure that the student exercises his or her right to be excused in accordance with a parental request. It will be the responsibility of the student to request permission to leave the class. I guess that just caught me as maybe problematic, especially with some younger students who might not want to speak up and say, I'm supposed to leave, that kind of thing. So I'm just curious if we could discuss that a little bit more.
I don't think we ever get any younger students. Quite frankly, I think it's typically the high school level, and we figure they can speak for themselves.
So in regards to a certain course or something, or?
Parts. It's usually a lesson or a unit that they're being exempt from, not a whole course, or they wouldn't be enrolled in the course, excuse me.
Yeah. So we've had this situation occur, and normally the kid says, I'm not going to participate, and they leave, and then they're designated a place to go, and
yes,
they have something to do.
Yes.
Okay. So what would happen if it was at a younger, I mean, we
Well,
would expect the same middle and elementary?
I think elementary teachers would help a young child if they knew they were exempt from part of a class.
I would hope. I was just curious because of how it's stated. It seems like it's all on the rest on the child, to leave class. And I know as if I was a young elementary student, I'd have a hard time speaking up to my teacher and say, I'm not supposed to be, you don't want to be disrespectful.
Yeah, we don't really get a whole lot of this.
Yeah.
Technically, Director Whitmer, the way that the statute's written, it is the responsibility of the parents and the student when they are exempt to get up and leave. It is not the responsibility of the school. If they want to exempt themselves, it's their responsibility to do that under the statute, not the district's. Because now we're policing whether they should be going or staying. It's them to get up. So the family that would instruct the student during this time period, they would need to leave. But the district would then provide them the area to go to during that time period for the exemption. So that's the way that statute is written.
So is this a case where number 4 applies? For example, with the younger student, the parent would send the child with a written statement that they would hand the teacher, and that suffices. So they don't have to actually, in the moment, speak up. That would be
It would be the responsibility of the family to make sure that that is being
right.
completed.
That makes sense.
So what I'm understanding is the day of the lesson that the child's not supposed to be a part of, the child would walk in, know that that's the day that they are supposed to leave, and they have to communicate that to the teacher.
Correct.
It's all on them,
Correct.
no matter the age.
Right of the parent and to have the child exempt at that time. So they're the ones that have to initiate that process.
And there's no liability on the part of the teacher or the district if the child were to remain by, say, accident because they didn't feel confident to speak up or they didn't really know what they're supposed to do for some reason, maybe miscommunication. And I'm just wondering what that looks like in the
There
event
is no
that
liability at all, no.
Okay.
Because it's the responsibility of the parent to make sure that to follow the procedures established by the school and to have the student exit the classroom for that exemption. It's not the district's, it's the parent who wants to exempt, and they have the right to do so. And they're the ones that have to take those steps to make sure that the child is educated to know that they're not supposed to be in there and to leave the classroom. That's
it's
the way
just
it's
not
written.
sitting well with me because I mean, I'm looking at the district as,
Statute.
I understand. I'm just looking at the district as being like the authority over that child in those moments. And
Not at that
so-
moment because as President Connolly indicated, that if there's a note, that the parent's responsibility to provide the note to make sure that there's an understanding of that child leaving. It is their responsibility to notify the district they want to be exempt from that type of
instruction. I get it.
instruction. Thank you for the word.
Yeah.
Understood your frustration with that, but that's the process.
Thank you for clarifying that.
So the change that's being proposed here is just to change the timeline. Instead of walking in on the day of with a note from the parent, they have to have it in 5 days in advance. So my question is related to that. How does a parent know what's going to be taught 5 days in advance in order to comply with this? Is it the course that they're objecting to, or is it that particular lesson on that day that they plan? I don't know how they would know in advance.
They would have to communicate with the teacher.
They have every parent has the right to, and please, and I don't know how it's done in every school district, but every parent has the right to review the curriculum and to determine what parts of that curriculum they want to be exempt from, and is their responsibility to review it. It's their responsibility then to provide notice that with a portion of it that they are going to want to be exempt from and give the notification of that. Correct.
So what they could ask for from the teacher ahead of time is a scope of sequence, some outline of the units being covered, and maybe even some lesson plans being discussed during a certain questionable topic.
Correct.
Does this include the PSSA as well? Or is that something different?
A parent can exempt their child from the PSSA after review and notification to the assistant superintendent. A little different process.
Is it? Okay. Thank you.
So Mr. Pratt, I do understand the responsibility being on the parent and student to give the heads up, hey, I'm not supposed to be here for this. Does the teacher have any responsibility to give the parents a heads up, hey, I'm teaching this thing that you exempted your child from tomorrow or Tuesday, or so the student and the parent are prepared for that school day to say.
I don't know how it's done in each district, but again, it's the responsibility of the parent to review and be able to indicate when and that's their,
Yeah,
I don't know,
understand that,
again, I don't,
but
each class is different, but that's just the process that.
okay.
Well,
It just as the parent, just knowing when to tell your kid, hey, you have to ask today, like when this lesson's actually coming up, if there's any
each parent is different.
heads up given to the parents.
Each notification from parent is different, each student reaction is different, so it's really, but the onus is on the parents to make sure that the child understands when to exempt themselves from that.
Okay.
So there's a statement that was added in number 8, which is at the very bottom of the policy, that talks about alternate instruction being offered to the student, that they, the district has an opportunity to do that, and that they're treated fairly through the process, not favorably or adversely. And it addresses that, which is something that was not previously in the policy. Any other questions, comments on this policy?
I would just like to add a comment. I think, sometimes, at least from my experience, it might say be made 5 days in advance, but I don't know if that's law. What teachers work with the parents and they work with the kids, and I think sometimes if maybe it was 2 days in advance notice, the teacher will say, "Yeah, sure, we'll work with you." So, I think that's the way it works, at least from my experience.
Of course, this policy is written, to make a provision for these students so they can exercise their rights. But the rest of the policy is really protection for the district. Is that correct, Mr. Pratt?
Correct.
So it protects the district. Now, what happens if a legitimate request is made verbally in the moment or 5 days in advance, and then we forget to honor it? For example, it seems to me you get something written 5 days in advance, and it's a Wednesday, and you go through a whole weekend, and it's the following Wednesday or Tuesday, however you count the days, and we forget to let student be excused. Is there any repercussions that can come back on the district?
Case by case analysis of it. I don't just a plain statement of, is there any repercussion? Depends. I'm sure there could be something, but nothing drastically liable in that scenario. If a mistake is made, a mistake is made.
Okay. All right. Any other policies? That was 105.2. Anything related to public comment? Policy 903.
Yes, President Conley, I'd like to just ask a couple questions. There's a lot of bold, meaning there's a lot more, I guess, parameters around public comment, and I'm wondering how we communicate these things to the public, or just let it up to them to go to this policy, read it for themselves. So that was my first question.
Well, I guess I should let the solicitor answer this, but when we put out the notice with an intent to change policy, there's 2 public readings, 2 subsequent months as a minimum, and then it's posted publicly. But we typically don't advertise the policies otherwise. If we started with requirements to advertise specific policies, that would create quite a burden on the district to advertise every single policy with some recurrent frequency.
There's also an AR recommended from PSBA that comes with this policy, and it is called the presiding officer statement that we haven't worked through yet.
Okay. I see
So
that there.
just as President Connolly makes a statement before the public comment, it would just probably change a little bit with the new policy, whether we accept this AR or not.
Okay. There's a lot. All right, so I'm just throwing this out there because just kind of wanted to get a feel for if anybody else thought this or if we should not change anything, but I didn't know what people's thoughts were about the idea of changing our public comment times. from the 3 and 2 to something a little different, or just in favor of the community? Maybe a 5 minutes versus the 3, or no?
I think it's good the way we have it, my opinion. Seems to be working. We went through a whole crew of people and they got what they had to say within 3 minutes. There's no really point in lengthening it. I can't imagine if each one of them had 5 minutes.
I don't know if we exceeded our 30-minute period. I suspect we did. We had about 15 speakers, but quite a few of them got finished with less than 3 minutes.
And Director Whitmer, just also understand at any point in time, if you do have a number of other, speakers, that the 30-minute restriction can be suspended by the board, because it's a policy. You can suspend that for that meeting at that point in time. We did that for a number of times during the pandemic, just expanding the amount of time that individuals can speak. So you can always temporarily suspend the time limits just based on the need or the issue at the time.
In that case, could you turn around and make the second time 3 minutes also?
You could always, as a board, suspend the rules,
Exactly.
but the 3 and 2 that you see here are not out of line with other school districts and what they provide for their board meetings.
I was just thinking 3 and 3 and be done with it.
I like that.
Fair. All right, any more comments on the public comment policy? Next one is the 106 guides for planned instruction. Was there any questions or comments related to that? Do we often get requests to deviate from content? Dr. Cartwright?
I'm not sure what you mean.
In this policy, it says each guide for planned instruction, if a teacher or a staff member is going to conduct instruction and they decide they want to deviate from the content, it has to be approved in advance by the superintendent or designee. We get those types of requests often?
I don't. Dr. Strasbaugh, Dr. Hauk, do you hear from teachers on that topic?
We do not. I think this change is because the original language almost made it sound like teaching the curriculum was optional, or you could maybe teach it. I think it's a much stronger terms. The new language is much stronger that says, this is the approved curriculum by the board. This is what you need to teach, and that they need to seek prior approval before they deviate from the board approved curriculum. I have never had anyone ask me to do that, but the language is just much stronger that requires teachers to teach the board approved curriculum.
That makes sense because, it used language shall use the guide in a selective manner, so what do you mean by that?
Exactly.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments on that one?
I'm just curious, do teachers have to turn in their lesson plans or their guide, it's called here, or do they do it?
They have to be available for us.
Okay.
We do not submit them.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on any of the policies? All right, let's go to agenda item 6.02, request by county commissioners to use the schools as a public polling location. And let's see, where does it speak to the authority in that agenda item? I remember reading, it talks about the authority of the county commissioners to use the schools or other public places. Where did I read that?
In an email from Mr. Pratt, I believe.
That's what it was. Okay. So, This is a request from the county commissioners to use our schools. They haven't notified us specifically of any school. So where we stand right now, we don't have other than a general request. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
So do we need to wait for them to specifically ask for schools, or what is our way of acting on this?
I am sure, I mean, since they are, I read the letter that the commissioners had sent. It appears to be a form letter to all superintendents, all school districts throughout the county. I think they're just looking to see who has interest in doing this instead of forcing schools, districts to do this, because there are a lot of issues surrounding the use of a school building, as I explained in my email. In the past and in dealing with other requests by other county commissioners as well as the York County commissioners in the past, you have security issues, access issues. You have issues that when the election code was written, which had this reference to it, I'm sure they did not have the knowledge of what we know today about the security issues involving and the disruption of the educational process, of closing schools and everything else. So their request is to see who has interest. If you do have interest, the normal procedures have been, especially with the York County commissioners, is to work with you to find location that best suits the school. Deals a couple of things that you have to realize. Number one, it has to be ADA accessible. Number two, you have to worry yourselves with security issues of poll workers and everything else about having background if you're going to have school open during that day, because now you have scenarios of people that will, under the code, will be having contact with students because they'll be in the same building. Then you have security issues with how you're getting people in and out to vote and not have access to other parts of the building. So there's a lot that you have to work with in dealing with that issue. Plus, I know that Dr. Cartwright forwarded you the calendar, the school calendar that you had already approved, and the ramifications that would have for the school, for the educational process. And so there are a lot of issues that you have to work through. It is interesting that they are requesting it for the general election in November, but not for the primary. They didn't already look for a primary this year. So is it really an issue here in Dover or not? I don't know that for a fact. So that's just something to think about. But it's just really based on the ability of the school to even allow a building to be used as a polling place.
Well, I can say in Dover Township, part of this came about because of down at the township building, at one time you had 2 districts voting at that building.
Correct. Yep.
And traffic was horrendous on Davidsburg Road. And so then they moved District 1 to New Creation Church right across the street from Libe. And they're looking for another location for District 2, is my understanding. And so I think that's part of what's triggering them to say, are there any schools
Right.
available to
Right.
alleviate this problem?
And I know that they also look at they're looking at other facilities besides schools. All right. I mean, so you talked about New Life Church being used. Churches are used. There are community centers that are used. Again, it's then balancing the disruption of the educational process for that day. That's what they're going to be balancing. They don't want to force it on you. That's why they look at alternatives. They do in the letter. They do talk about consolidating polling places based on proximity to the regions. But in this case, with the general request, it would just be: are you interested? Do you want to start talking, or are there other locations within those polling areas that they can utilize, and they just want to get their that information in place?
May I weigh in? My first time voting, I was 18 years old. We went to the gym at the now middle school, and that gym was able to be completely separate from the rest of the school because the bathrooms are actually in the lobby out there, and the whole gym was just, a fill-in for your lines, and the parking lot on the side was ample space for anybody coming in to vote. So
The
I
other
don't know
prob-
if
yeah.
some of our other elementary schools, have that opportunity where the kids just wouldn't have gym that day, obviously, but, if there's a way to have, elementary schools, maybe not so much because their parking lots are small.
You also have to realize that you have issues with in the morning dropping children off, buses dropping off, and the traffic of people coming in for election. Same thing in the afternoon. You'll have that type of traffic issues as well that you would have to deal with. People not knowing what your traffic issues are. So you have to balance those out in those determinations, correct? And I know you, Director Whitmer, it was only a couple of years ago that you were 18 years of age. So, I mean, things have changed though a little bit. So just.
Yeah, I was
It's
gonna
been
weigh
a
in.
long time
I was
since she was 18.
gonna weigh in on some of those concerns too. We've seen even tonight how partisan things have gotten. So I'm not sure I'd be comfortable with having the public coming into a school that's in session. Also, with this request here, it looks like it impacts 3 school days. So what would we do if, for instance, Live was chosen, because I know they're wanting to move from the church across the street. Would it be a district-wide day off, an early dismissal, or just the affected school?
We would not close one elementary school and not the other 3.
That's what I thought. So it affects the entire district.
And we don't have a single elementary school that has, because they have the gymatoriums or whatever, so we don't have one where we could provide secure access
We do not,
without closing the whole school.
not an elementary building.
The middle school is a traffic problem, no matter how you look at it.
I
Right?
understand it's a traffic problem without having an election going on. So.
Yeah, I can see that.
You'd have staff parking and parent pickup and drop off, and then election parking. It would be a mess.
So there's no access to the gym in the high school except from inside unless you go through back doors and that kind of stuff. But we do have the auxiliary gym that has its own door that's away from the, you'd have to probably quarantine off that one parking lot, have them walk around that, what is that, the north side of the building?
That's the staff parking lot, end of the building,
Yeah.
where the aux.
You'd also have to look at, ADA accessibility, being able to get people in and out of there. If it's a long walk, if it's inclines, steps, whatever it is, all those things have to be evaluated and considered.
So that would be on the county though, right? If we did that.
If
So
you
they
did-
would have to assess whether or not that would be
Correct.
suitable.
They would make that assessment. Correct.
So the only thing that we would possibly have to offer them would be that auxiliary gym if it meets the criteria, ADA and what have you.
And also the security issues as well that go around with it and the access, making sure that the access. And then also the other thing to realize is that you're also looking at, polling places open pretty early in the morning, having the building open at that point in time, having the staff available to open, make sure the place is then cleaned and everything else afterwards. So you'd have those concerns as well that come into play.
That makes sense.
Actually, this room, I'm sure Dr. Cartwright would not approve of the idea, but this room it actually seems more accessible or more separated than some of the other options we listed.
The
I'm not
back
sure
of,
if it's big enough.
There's
the
not a
back
lot
of-
of parking up there.
the back of the middle school was
Yeah, parking would
a
still be an
perfect
issue.
location for that voting. And this is all obviously up for discussion. Maybe you could just not have middle school that day, but I see how the parking was an issue, but the parking was the exact same back then as it is now. I mean, there's no difference in the flow of traffic other than the fact the students were the ones parking out front. Now they park somewhere else. But the back of the middle school is able to be the gym. You do not have to have anybody access the school from there. It's completely like you can lock those doors, and the bathrooms are in the lobby facing south.
You also have to consider whether or not the middle school is in the proper region that they're looking for to alleviate some of the concerns. So that's the other thing too. They might not be that the middle school is in the proper region for that election.
Yeah, it would just be
So
the borough.
is that in precinct 1 or the borough?
That'd be the borough.
Yep.
So the borough's already got a location, so
That would not be you wouldn't use it.
It didn't matter back when I voted. We lived up on Bull Road. So we obviously, it wasn't about the location as far as where people lived.
Understand, it's not it's the county that would make that assessment.
I got you.
so if the borough already has a good place, we don't have any crowding issues at the borough. I mean, we've had poll standers standing there. There's never any crowding issues there. The crowding issues are at precinct 1
District 1.
and 2, right?
Well, 2 has the whole township building now, so they are, that works well now that there's only one district there. So I think this would only really affect Libe. It looks like Libe would be the target. So,
And we already talked about that. There's not really any good options.
So why are we trying to solve a polling problem when it's not our problem to solve?
Well, it's a request made to us,
No,
so
I'm
we
like-
have to determine what we're going to say
Okay.
with justification. So it sounds like to me, if 1 is the problem, precinct 1 is the problem, and Libe is the only option, we don't really, other than if we elect to close school down for all the elementary schools in the district, that's probably not a good option.
It's a disruption to our educational environment, in my opinion. They can just tell them no.
yeah,
That
that
can
and
solve it.
security are my main concerns.
I don't see it that way. I see it as a great opportunity to show our students that we can be voters, and that if it doesn't provide much loss, it's one day, and then our constituents are struggling to get out to the polling places because there's no parking, they're out in the cold or they're out wherever in the bad weather and they're not going to come and vote. Like if we have a facility to provide and they're the taxpayers, how are we to argue that? And I think we're assuming Libe would be where they would go. It sounds like it would be the commissioner's duty to figure out which building would be the best suitable.
Well, if it's for precinct 1, what other school?
I'm saying if they want a school to use as their polling place, I think they would decide regardless of how far away it is from precinct 1. That's my assumption anyway, that they're just going to see what their opportunities are and decide from there.
Gotcha.
Did they only ask for 1 polling?
They
place?
haven't asked for any particular school. They haven't mentioned any precincts. They just mentioned that they wanted us to have an in-service day on that day so that they would have options at our schools.
Okay.
But our calendar's already been set. We would have to go back and change our calendar if we were going to do something that closed the schools down on that day.
I mean, if we're discussing it, how does administration feel about it?
They've already stated they don't want to close it at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
That also happens to be parent-teacher conference week, so our week is already disrupted. Elementary students only have 2.5 days of school that week. High school students have 3.5 days of school that week. I put that schedule in public comment at that item so you could see that.
Yeah.
And we have no PD days in November.
You would have to keep in mind, though, they would need Monday as well as Tuesday to set up the polling stations and the equipment. I know there was some talk of churches being used when they were talking about shifting the Pennsylvania primary date, and they were saying it would take the weekend to set up all the equipment, which the proposal was Easter weekend, so that was a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
So it would take away Monday and Tuesday and possibly Wednesday too, even though we're already dismissing early on Wednesday. So there's a bigger impact than just election day.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns on this agenda item? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to our second comment period. This will be a period we have already set for 2 minutes. We'll be a little bit flexible. There's not that many people in the room. So, same rules as last time.
Katrina Rothrock, 6836 Pleasant View Drive, Thomasville, PA. Actually, I just wanted to share something with you. I believe Director Kindig had mentioned about taxes and increasing taxes for widows and in the community. And so I wanted to share with you something that Spring Grove does. It's called the Strive Tax Rebate, and it allows residents who are 62 years or older to actually come into the school. They'd have to get their clearances, but they can actually go in and volunteer within the school and giving back to the school. And by doing that, they can earn up to $500 credit that they can use towards their taxes. And so I just thought that I would share it with you. Always like to bring some type of solution. So I have a copy for it, and I'll give it to you, President Conley.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other public comments? All right, hearing none. This takes us to our section where we have comments and observations from the Board of Directors. And so before we do that, I did have a question. We had, during our public comment, Councilor Pratt, we had someone that brought up an issue about no deliberation on our on one of our decisions, and I suspect they may have been talking about the ILC agreement. We had no deliberation during the public meeting when we voted on that. So can you explain the process of how that works when we're retaining counsel and when we're voting on it in the public meeting?
I don't know specifically about what they mean about no deliberation, in the sense that, I mean, you're not required to have deliberation on everything. So I don't know exactly what the question would be.
Well, so when we deliberate in executive session when we're talking about retaining counsel. And then so in the public meeting, there's
no, we don't deliberate about retaining counsel. You interview them and you talk to them about what they provide to you, and then you decide whether or not in public, whether or not you're going to retain them. And that's what you did, is you determined that based on the interview as to whether or not you're going to retain them.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's start at this end of the board. Since the last time last meeting we started with Director Wilverton, I'll start with Director Hogan.
I just wanted to say the Dover Eagle Foundation has a community day at the York Revolution Stadium. All proceeds benefit the Dover Eagle Foundation to help support our students and our teachers. The event is Tuesday, May 28th at 6:30 p.m. Tickets are $12, and you can go to dovereaglefoundation.com/York Revs. I believe that's where you can purchase your ticket.
All right. Thank you. Director Miller.
You want our board reports from other meetings, or do you want?
So the reports that'll be next week at the business meeting. So this is just comments.
Do that wrong. I
Yeah.
always do that wrong. Okay. I just want
Comments
to
and
say I enjoyed Matilda. Roald Dahl is one of my favorite authors, and it was great to see the performers up on stage. So great job. And it was mentioned at the township meeting last night that the school did a great job with Matilda. So it's out there in the public as well.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. Director Emy.
Nothing at this point.
All right, thanks. Director Kindig.
I have no comment.
Okay. I'll go to you next.
No, thank you.
Director McKinney.
I also enjoyed Matilda. That was an incredible performance. I was there for Sunday's show. Also want to give a little congrats to the baseball teams, both varsity and JV. Came out hitting the ball like crazy last night. They both won their first scrimmage of the year. So they had a rough season last year, but solid start to this year. So congrats to them. Also, just to the public, there were some comments about us not being open and wanting to listen to the public. That's really not the case. If you have any concerns, you can always email us. We will take to heart anything you say. I like hearing public comments. I like the community involvement. It seems to be on the uptick, so hopefully it stays positive and we work together and, just not start rumors out in the public. Let's come and talk to us about it. We'll talk to you. We'll be open. We will be transparent. So yeah. Next.
Thank you. Director Meese?
I don't have anything.
Nothing. Okay, thanks. Director Whitmer?
I'm all right, thank you.
No comment.
Okay, all right. I didn't understand what you said, Director Whitmer. I'm sorry. Said
Said I'm all right.
Oh, I'm all right. Okay. All right. I'd like to thank the public for coming out. Statements that were made are fair, and I understand the perspective. We are weighing into this stuff very deeply. There's a lot of material for us still to learn that we're pouring through. We do read all the emails, not the best at responding to everything yet, but what you're saying to us is resonating, and we appreciate that. In particular tonight, as I said before, the teacher's presentation, I could see the solidarity and the way that the teachers in particular expressed themselves, I thought was exceptionally professional, and I appreciate that. I know there's emotion tied to all of these issues, and you could have certainly taken the opportunity to lash out in a mean way, but you did not, and we appreciate that as well. And as well, most of the public has already gone home at this point, but I said it before, I thought their comments as well, and especially from the students with their parents beside them, I appreciate the way they formulated their input and the way they delivered it. I know that if those were my children making those presentations, I would have been quite proud of them, and I know their parents were as well. I also want to acknowledge the attendance tonight of two of our former board members. President Eifert was here tonight with his family, and his daughter and his wife both spoke in public comment, and as well Dennis Dasheau, one of our former board members, was here tonight as well with his daughter. So it was good to see them, and glad they're still engaged in the business of the schools. So without any further ado, future meeting announcements. We do have a meeting scheduled for next Tuesday night where we'll take up all of these things that we discussed tonight in a slightly different format, because we will be consolidating some of these items into individual consent agendas. And we're looking forward to being able to hopefully complete that meeting in better time than we have the last couple of months.
Are you planning an executive session at the beginning of that? And if so, at what time?
Yeah, the executive session right now, go ahead, Dr. Carter, I see reaching for your mic.
We are discussing the grievance at 6:30.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It has been moved by Director Emig. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
Seconded by Director McKinney. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, we are adjourned.